staggering news that is getting national attention.
Out of nowhere, they blindside him.
They wrong for that now.
This story went instantly mega viral.
That what you get.
This riverboat fight was the biggest viral thing to happen in 2023.
August 5th, 2023, Montgomery, Alabama. It's a sultry day, and the riverfront is packed with tourists. The Harriet II, a dinner cruise boat, is trying to return to the dock.
There's a little pontoon boat that's blocking where this boat is supposed to park.
This boat had been trying to dock for 45 minutes.
The frustrated co-captain, Damian Pickett, takes a dinghy to the dock to try and speed things up.
We got off our ship to move that black pontoon boat on his own.
But that infuriates the pontoon passengers, who are busy partying nearby.
The folks who own the private boat, they're there on a leisure day. They were drinking. They were just hanging out.
Tensions quickly escalate to obscene gestures.
You can tell by their body language that this is not just a pleasant conversation.
Ooh, confrontation with the owner of the boat.
They were being dismissive, they were being disrespectful, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of people thought they were doing that because he was black.
Get out the way! Get out the way!
Now, dozens of people are recording on their phones.
You have a man who is by himself facing a group of people who are increasingly becoming hostile.
That's when things turn.
This guy comes running into frame and attacks the man.
Out of nowhere, they blindside him and then just punch him right in his face.
His reaction was really unexpected. The first thing he does is he takes off his hat and he throws it in the air, like this is the sign to the world that it's about to go down.
I feel like collectively, most black people saw that as like a Wakanda moment.
The situation has become physical, and the boat captain is heavily outnumbered.
At one point, this captain has 6 guys surrounding him, just attacking him, pummeling him. He's on the ground. You can see people are trying to get to him as fast as they can.
Then, the most unexpected thing I've ever seen in any viral video happened.
They wrong for that now. That boy swimming his over there. Get out there, young buck.
This man is swimming from the boat to the dock so that he can help this man. I mean, this has got to be the most loyal coworker in the history of the world. If your coworkers aren't down for you like this, you need new coworkers.
The swimming coworker gets to the dock just as the fight dies down. But as Captain Pickett walks away, bystanders come to his aid, reigniting the fight.
It becomes a big group melee. It just grows and grows and grows.
Obviously, my first instinct is, do these people have a gun? Somebody's gonna grab a gun and it's gonna turn. This could go really, really bad.
Now come up out that boat, baby. They ready to move out.
When the Harriet does finally manage to dock, it becomes complete chaos.
BJ! Oh my God! Oh! In the water! In the water!
When police show up, they struggle to control the melee.
The man with the folding chair starts hitting people like this is WWE, like this is wrestling.
Uh-huh! You come! Uh-huh! Boom! Ah! Boom! Ah! Boom! 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 Ah! Boom! Ah! Boom! Ah!
It takes 20 minutes for things to simmer down.
Yeah!
Videos of the wild scene immediately go viral.
The city of Montgomery, Alabama is on edge after a large, chaotic brawl broke out there over the weekend.
When that ferry finally docked, some passengers joining in on the fight. One man seen swinging a chair.
Authorities interviewed dozens of people. 5 are charged with assault, harassment, or disorderly conduct. They're all convicted. A few get short prison sentences. Others are ordered to take anger management classes or do community service. Surprisingly, Captain Pickett is also charged with third-degree assault, a charge that is eventually dismissed. On social media, people go to town with memes.
On your left. Homeboy picked me up and we just started doing charity. We was donating ass whoopers to anybody who needed it.
The reason that we can laugh at it is because no one got seriously hurt. Nobody pulled out a knife, nobody pulled out a gun, nobody died.
Don't think because we chairs we don't stand on business.
The viral incident infuriates people across the globe.
The riverboat fight was the biggest thing to happen in 2023.
But there's admiration for the way Captain Pickett's co-workers leapt to his defense.
It was nice to see collectively a group coming together to protect, because they knew in that instant who was in the wrong and who was in the right. And so I think just collectively, we felt good about it.
In this next viral clip, it's the cops who come together to catch a criminal with an unusual getaway tactic.
We've seen a lot of wild pursuits in Southern California. He's got the element of surprise.
February 13th, 2023, Los Angeles, California. It's early morning when a 911 caller reports a robbery.
There's been a truck and trailer stolen. They're on the lookout for it now, and they identify it.
What's the primary?
Adam, 5'5".
I love anything that happens in downtown Los Angeles. It's basically like playing GTA. You know it's going to be a lit video when it's in downtown.
Police tail the truck to get a closer look at its plates.
Whenever you have a stolen vehicle, you're wondering, why did this person steal this vehicle in the first place? Was there another crime already committed? Are they in possession of weapons? So there's a lot of variables that you're considering when you decide to actually light them up and attempt to pull them over.
But this thief is determined to get away.
He takes off.
He doesn't have much room to negotiate.
At speeds of more than 60 miles an hour, police are in hot pursuit down narrow residential streets. And then...
TC.
As the officers yell TC for traffic collision, the driver takes off again. And this chase is about to take a very viral turn. Police in LA are chasing a driver who is trying to flee in a stolen truck.
We're going to be in pursuit.
Seatbelt.
I don't even know if he knows where he's going.
Even a crash doesn't stop this guy, so air reinforcements are called in.
The one thing we know about car chases, especially in LA, there's going to be a helicopter somewhere.
It's not just this one person that's chasing after this vehicle, it's a coordinated effort. They're trying to box this person in to cut off potential escape routes.
If he starts getting too crazy,
You're trying to weigh the pros of catching this person for the crime they committed versus the dangers it poses to the surrounding area.
Down by 355 is in pursuit of a code 37.
And then...
he hits something, the truck just spins out.
Our from 4 this place is 5500 supervisor.
Hey, stop!
Armed officers surround the disabled truck.
We have the advantage, but he throws a curveball.
Hey, put it down! Let's see it!
It's a skateboard.
Stop! Stop! The police! Stop!
I guess if you think I have wheels, it's faster than my feet. But the reality is, unless your skateboard is from Back to the Future and you're Michael J. Fox, you are not getting away on a skateboard.
And when a patrol car pulls in front of him, it's game over.
Relax. Give me your hand. Give me your hand. Give me your hand. Sorry, don't be sorry. Just give us your hand. That's it. Relax. Relax.
Police release the video to the media, and it quickly goes viral.
You've never seen a getaway like this.
That driver taking off again, this time on a skateboard.
30-year-old Pedro Villalobos is arrested, treated at a local hospital for a leg injury, and charged with 2 counts of vehicle theft and reckless evading. Ultimately, he gets 2 years probation.
Once you get into the police pursuit, then you decide to resist arrest. You're just building up charges as you go.
And for the LAPD, it's a chase to remember.
There's been so many times where I've been chasing someone in a vehicle and they get out on foot, but I've never seen a situation where they get out of 4 wheels and hop on another 4 wheels.
On the other side of the country, a criminal is hiding something far more ominous than a skateboard in his car.
Tonight to a close call in Tampa.
This really towering figure comes around the corner.
I knew it's life and death. He had it chambered, ready to go.
He wasn't afraid to go after this guy.
March 19th, 2023, Tampa, Florida. It's a busy Saturday at the world-renowned Mons Venus Strip Club, and more than 200 people are inside.
This is a very regular night at a club. There's no problems.
Manny Resto, a former professional wrestler and 30-year veteran in security, is stationed by the front door.
We have 2 other security guys, and we try to stay separated so we cover all the areas. I noticed that a truck came in the parking lot and was blocking all the other parked vehicles, and it was running.
Something about the car instinctively worries Manny. And then,
all of a sudden, this really towering figure comes around the corner.
It was a guy with a mask. I thought, okay, is this one of my wrestling buddies, MMA buddies, security buddies playing a joke on me?
But this is no prank.
They have a red devil mask on, they're walking up to the door, and that's when this situation takes a dark turn.
I saw him raise his right arm up, and he had the Glock.
Manny is unarmed, but he can't let this man get inside.
He had a flashlight in one hand and a Glock in the other. He was going in there to shoot people and keep on shooting. I was thinking, get the gun out of his hand and get him on the floor.
As terrified bystanders flee, Manny is determined to stop the masked giant.
He's 6'5", 400 pounds. I'm 5'11", 250. He's a big man.
The man pistol whips Manny so violently he can barely think.
I was actually unconscious, punch drunk on my feet, but I knocked the gun out of his hand.
Suddenly, the man runs away. But as soon as Manny grabs the gun, he's back.
I didn't know if he had knives in his pocket. I didn't know what he has.
Now, everyone inside the club is in grave danger. When a masked gunman tries to enter a strip club in Tampa, former pro wrestler Manny Resto jumps into action to restrain him. And now, as 2 other security guards hold the man down, Manny pummels him.
I pistol whipped him a lot of times. I bashed his head in. I took teeth out of his mouth with my foot. I broke my foot. I did what I had to do to keep him down. No one was going to get killed on my watch.
Inside, a frantic employee calls for help. Police arrive within minutes and immediately arrest 44-year-old Michael Rudman. In his truck, they make an alarming discovery: 9 knives, numerous rounds of ammunition, and other firearm accessories.
This individual's going there with a target in mind. This could have been a catastrophic situation.
He told them he heard voices, and the voices told him to go inside and punish the sinners.
His ink is also concerning.
He had the dark one, and the other, he had Son of Satan and 666, and they were like homemade tattoo jobs, like carved in.
Making it even scarier is the revelation that this was a targeted attack.
He was casing all of the clubs the night before. Our video cameras show that he came in as a customer. You know, he wanted to be famous the wrong way.
Rudman is charged with multiple offenses, including aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, aggravated battery with a deadly weapon, and possession of cocaine. He's also ordered to undergo a mental health evaluation. The frightening incident instantly makes news.
Tonight, to a close call in Tampa, police say fast-acting security guards likely stopped a mass shooting.
Manny's heroism becomes a viral sensation.
And people come up telling me, thank you, my son was in the club that night. You saved his life. My daughter was in there.
I truly believe that if that security guard hadn't intervened, we would have had a mass casualty event.
The city of Tampa honors Manny with a Medal of Valor, an award rarely given to a private citizen. And he's relieved he was able to keep an important promise.
My club is run by women, and back when Pulse happened in Orlando, when all those people were killed, they were really scared and frightened, and I made an oath to all of them. I said, as long as I'm in that club, I will never allow a shooter to kill anybody. Even if it costs me my life, my job, or I get incarcerated, it's never gonna happen. And I lived up to my oath.
At a cell phone store in Texas, an employee's quick thinking saves the day.
The video people have been sharing all day.
That crook locked inside of the store.
At that point, it was too late.
April 17th, 2017, Houston, Texas. A customer with a baby stroller is counting her change when an armed robber walks in behind her.
This suspect walks into the store, goes to the back.
This gunman could have taken this woman or taken her child hostage. This could have been a really dangerous situation.
There are bullets in this gun. This could have been tragic.
Hey! Open it. No.
But the women who work here are oddly calm.
No.
She puts her hand on her hip, and she's like, oh no, we're not doing this again.
It turns out they know this guy. He robbed them just 2 weeks earlier.
He was in that store and got away with a lot. And this time, they weren't going to have it.
The unsuspecting thief is in for a rude shock. When he walks to the back, Karina Leone, in the black and white shirt, swiftly ushers everyone out. She bolts the door from the outside, locking him in.
This time, he's not going to get away.
He has no place to go. He starts to become frantic.
And that's when the weapon comes out.
Now, he's putting people outside and himself in danger. He's so close to the door, the bullets could ricochet right back at him. Luckily, he decides to stop firing.
Please, I have let it. Please.
No one has pity for this man. This is someone who entered a store and started harassing innocent people with a gun.
It doesn't matter what you say, what you do. The only way that you're coming out is if someone is coming to get you out.
Get your hands up! On the ground! On the ground! On the ground! On the ground! All the way down!
Although he got away after the previous robbery attempt, this time, John Bell is charged with aggravated robbery with a deadly weapon and sentenced to 5 years. As the crime goes viral, social media pokes fun at him for trying to shoot his way out of a store that he tried to rob twice.
The best part of this viral video is him on his knees pleading, somebody let me out. Normally, the roles are reversed.
Karina, the woman who bravely locked him in, tells reporters she was afraid for her life.
I don't know if he has a family. I don't know if he has kids, but I have a family too. You know, I could have been shot. We could have been shot.
At the end of the day, maybe he realized how big of a mistake was made.
Situations like this can escalate and really quickly.
She's making demands There's no calming this person down.
December 4th, 2018, Garland, Texas. It's business as usual at a local bank until one customer suddenly loses her cool.
No, tell him.
You can hear sort of the desperation in her voice.
No, tell him.
She was obviously on edge.
I'm not, Joe. This is not a game.
She's clearly asking for something that's not being given to her.
People start recording on their phones as the woman's rant turns ominous.
I'm gonna blow this bitch up and everybody in this. I'm not, Joe.
Now it's become a terrorist threat.
The person who is trying to help in this situation is trying to de-escalate what's happening.
It doesn't work. This woman is not playing.
Open the safe. Open the safe. I'm here to rob this.
There's no calming this person down. She is demanding money over and over again.
An employee frantically calls for help.
Terrorist planning to rob us. Open the safe.
Watching this woman, you just wonder, what does it take for a person to get to this level where they're walking into a bank, demanding the safe be open?
Does everybody want to die today?
Is this woman to be taken seriously? Is she hiding a weapon? Brave customers step in to assist with the volatile situation.
Just don't concern me. It doesn't matter. This is not your fight. I'm broke and I need some money. That's what y'all need to do is open up the safe.
She's making demands. She's talking about a personal situation, things that she wants. You can make demands of anything that you want. It's just a matter of who's on the other side and how are they going to respond to this.
I'm broke and I need some money because I need some money. Y'all understand that I need money right now? I'm gonna blow this bitch up and everybody in this.
Does she really think that just by making threats and threatening to bomb the place, essentially, and everyone inside of it, that is going to force them to open up the safe?
The woman is having a full-on tantrum.
She is there on a mission, trying to get something, but it's not working very well.
After 5 minutes, the employee who has been patiently trying to control her manages to guide her out of the bank.
He really kept everyone calm, which is important in this situation.
And it turns out her scary threats were nothing but talk.
The only weapon she has is her purse.
Video of the wild outburst goes viral with millions of views. And there are plenty of comments from people who say they relate to her desperate pleas.
Watching this video, it feels like you could be this woman. Everyone is dealing with money problems. We have a recession. You know, you're trying to buy eggs, and it just feels like I'm just gonna go to a bank and I want them to give me money.
Why don't they listen?
She's really lucky things didn't turn violent. She's really lucky that the security officer that was working that day is the one that she got.
The woman, Katie Johnson, is arrested and charged with bank robbery. She's sentenced to 36 months.
Thankfully, in this situation, no one was injured, and the outcome was as positive as it could be.
But you won't believe the outcome of this next shocking viral video.
This Virginia home reduced to rubble.
Massive home explosion.
It was really traumatizing. Something out of an action movie.
December 4th, 2023, Arlington, Virginia.
It's Northern Virginia, a very high-end area outside of D.C., very expensive, nice homes.
Emily Saxon has lived here for just a few months.
It's a very quiet little corner of Arlington. It's kind of off the main drag of all the bars and restaurants.
She's looking forward to getting home after a busy workday as a nurse when she sees something shocking.
There was local news that was reporting that there was a man in the neighborhood who was sending flare signals outside of his window.
A police officer just so happened to be sitting there when he noticed flares going up.
When Emily gets to her neighborhood, there's a flurry of commotion at a house a block away from hers.
The person inside not cooperating, refusing to come outside. SWAT is brought in. You're thinking, what is this going to be, a shootout? Do they have firearms? Do they have other explosives that are more lethal than just the flare?
Emily decides to stay inside her house, where she believes she'll be safe.
It was really scary. Everyone that lives on that street felt panic.
The intense standoff with the barricaded man goes on for more than 3 hours. When...
What's most disturbing about this story is this could really happen anywhere.
December 4th, 2023. A 3-hour standoff with police ends when a house in Arlington, Virginia is violently torn apart in a powerful explosion.
Initially, I'm thinking this has got to be like a gas leak or something.
When I felt it, I was laying back on my couch and I physically recoiled forward and like my book fell out of my hand.
Emily nervously walks outside to find out what's happened.
I round the corner and I see the mushroom cloud explosion fire. And I just see a swarm of people outside. The whole neighborhood was just, I think, in a state of shock.
Now, Emily is terrified.
That's like something just crumbling right before your eyes. What if a second blast happens?
Luckily, it doesn't. And after a tense night, police hold a press conference to reassure everyone.
There's no ongoing threat to the community related to this incident.
They also identify the man as the owner of the house, 56-year-old James Yu. He's presumed dead. They are still investigating, but Yu is someone who was on their radar.
The individual had previously communicated with the FBI via phone calls, online tips, and letters over a number of years. Primarily complaints about alleged frauds he believed were perpetrated against him.
A paranoid individual who had been calling the FBI and making complaints for an extended period of time.
The cause of the explosion is still unknown. The fire department had turned the gas off, and officials were exercising caution as they tried to coax the suspect out.
Officers began to deploy non-flammable, less lethal chemical munitions to multiple areas in hopes of compelling the suspect to surrender.
What's perplexing about this situation is we'll probably never know what the true intention of the suspect was.
The explosive video quickly goes viral.
Let's get to that massive home explosion in Virginia that happened as police tried to talk a barricaded man out.
And the ordeal leaves Emily shaken.
For it to get so viral and then for it to be global news, for it to happen in this seemingly like perfect neighborhood. The whole message was really that you just never know who your neighbors are. Everyone is a stranger.
Across the country in Texas, a driver plows into a suburban house, trapping the homeowners inside.
Officers were approaching the home when it exploded.
I just remember a big heat wave.
The terrifying scene.
It's one of the scariest scenarios out there.
April 7th, 2018, Hurst, Texas. A peaceful Saturday is about to be shattered.
You have a family inside their home. You have to think that's the safest place you can be. Then a car crashes into the home.
First 911.
A truck just ran into my house. It's in my house.
All right, I'm going to be getting some help out that way, but you're not hurt?
No, but I'm trapped in the corner of my room.
The 61-year-old cowers inside the room where the truck slammed into the house. Her terror made worse by not knowing what has happened to her husband or adult son, who were also home. When officers pull up a few minutes later, something seems off.
You see the driver standing very calmly off to the side.
Officer Travis Heiser immediately steps out to investigate.
If he had gotten out there 2 minutes earlier, he would have been blown up.
Are you all right? 222, don't you copy that? We had explosion in the house. You okay? Yeah.
This was not a tiny explosion. This was a massive explosion. You can see the roof of the house blowing off.
As they get their bearings, officers panic.
That lady still in there? Is the caller still in there?
She in there?
Get back right in the house! Back! Come on! I'm coming!
Hey, medics in the back! Someone's in the back!
Officers find the couple's dazed son at the back of the home. When they rescue his parents, his dad is covered in soot, and his mom is frantic.
My dog!
Moments later, the family dog is also pulled to safety. Emergency calls flood in from concerned neighbors.
First 911.
Yeah, I think a house exploded. First 911. I heard like the horrible loud boom. Yeah, we're taking care of it. We got it under control.
With everyone out of the house and the fire department handling the blaze, police turn their attention to the driver of the truck.
Did you hit your head when you had this accident? When you crashed, did you hit your head?
Alejandro Castro tells police his brakes failed, but then confesses that he's been drinking.
What did you drink?
Oh, look, me?
Yes.
Me?
Yes.
2, 3 drinks.
About an hour ago or when?
1 hour, yeah.
Castro passes a field sobriety test, but he has a previous conviction for driving while intoxicated.
You don't have a Texas driver's license or anything?
I don't find no.
There are questions about whether he should have even been driving at all.
He's arrested, then transferred to federal custody on an immigration hold. It turns out that when the SUV careened into the house, it ruptured a gas line.
99.9% of the time, gas lines do exactly what they're supposed to do. But there are cases where they will cause an entire home to go up in a fireball in a split second. It's one of the scariest scenarios out there.
In fact, the mother suffers second-degree burns to 30% of her body. Incredibly, everyone else, including the family dog, survives.
This family is lucky that they got out alive, but they still suffered tremendous loss.
As for the first responders, several have to be treated for minor injuries. Officer Heiser tells reporters it's a miracle nobody died.
There was definitely some divine intervention that was reaching down. Otherwise, it would have exploded completely into my face.
Video of the frightening explosion goes viral.
What's so scary about this is how quickly circumstances in life can change. In 1 second, in the middle of a Saturday, their entire world changed.
Coming up next.
Start EMS.
A shocking video captures what happens when a loaded weapon falls into the wrong hands.
This scene is unbelievable.
A woman slipped her handcuffs.
It's an AR-15 assault rifle.
Start EMS! Start EMS! What the heck?
August 12th, 2022, Bridge Creek, Oklahoma. A man calls the cops about a woman who is in his yard, behaving bizarrely.
He wakes up seeing her barking like a dog in his front lawn. Something is not right here.
When police arrive, they immediately handcuff Rachel Clay and put her in the back seat of a patrol car.
The deputy is taking a report from the homeowner. They're having a simple conversation, and all of a sudden, gunfire rings out.
What was that?
Where is this coming from? It's coming from out of the blue.
Gunshots hit two people, not just the witness, but also one of the officers was grazed.
Danny, I'm hit right here. I'm hit right here too, Danny. Hit in the head.
They're not really sure what's happening next.
The homeowner, who has been shot in the chest, is bleeding but still talking to officers.
This is unbelievable. This victim is hit in the chest. He's able to walk, continue moving, goes over, finds cover.
What is going on? How is this man able to still be standing?
As 9 more shots ring out, it's mayhem, with everyone scrambling for safety.
County, we got shots fired up here. We need backup immediately. Start EMS. Start EMS. We got a civilian. Got a civilian hit. What the heck?
The cops are just confused. They're thinking, the woman's apprehended. Why is a random person now shooting at us?
What they don't realize is that inside the patrol car, Clay has managed to get her hands free.
You're placing someone in handcuffs. You can't imagine that they're able to finagle their way or figure out a way out of them.
And then she finds a compartment labeled gun, and the gun is what she grabs. She's now armed and dangerous.
Get out of her cuffs.
This is an AR-15 rifle, a very powerful weapon, and she knows how to use it.
Got a civilian hit.
Hearing the gunfire, the man's shocked son races outside.
Shots fired. Get over here. Get over here. Your dad's hit, man. He got hit. Dad, he got hit. Get out, Joey. Dad, are you okay?
As backup arrives, he is rushed to the hospital.
It just happened so quickly and so fast.
But this isn't over yet. Clay barricades herself inside the car.
She was in the cop car, taping up all the windows so no one could see what was going on.
She stays there for 3.5 hours until it all comes to a dramatic end, with news choppers capturing police breaking out the back window.
The tense standoff lasted hours.
She slipped her handcuffs and then fired off a round of shots.
The video goes viral, racking up millions of views.
The question on all of our minds is, why and how was she able to access this rifle?
It turns out that the glass partition was partially open because of the heat.
The air condition was on, and for the air to be able to reach the person in the back, the window was open.
They didn't think she was gonna reach for a gun.
Luckily, the 2 people Clay hit, the homeowner and a deputy whose head was grazed by a bullet, recover from their injuries.
She had good aim. These bullets really could cause major harm or death.
Clay is charged with 3 felony counts of shooting with intent to kill.
She was supposed to be medicated because of some mental health issues, and she was off her medication, and that is what led us to this scenario.
But she is deemed competent to stand trial. And there's a surprising turn when reporters reveal an unexpected plot twist.
Rachel Clay and the man they say she shot met the night before.
They knew each other for a short time.
The man who was shot is actually the one who brought the shooter into his own home. You never really know who you're meeting and what their ulterior motives could be. Stranger danger, we teach kids about that, but it's something that adults have to worry about too.
It began on a muggy June evening in 2000, the kind of night
when the air sticks to your skin, heavy with the scent of honeysuckle, and something darker, something unspoken. The town of Macon, Georgia, a place where everyone knew everyone's business, was about to be ripped apart by a silence so loud it left its mark on every doorstep, every cracked sidewalk, every flickering street lamp. A young woman, barely 23, vanished without a trace. Her name was Emily Harper, a waitress at a diner that smelled of frying bacon and stale coffee. She closed her shift late, waved goodbye to co-workers she would never see again, and walked toward the bus stop along Vine Street. The night swallowed her, and with her, any certainty that life in Macon was safe. The bus never came for her. The street was empty. Her footprints faded into nothing. Detectives arrived hours later, responding to a frantic call from her roommate. Panic laced her voice, trembling like a candle in the wind. Emily had not answered her phone, had not come home, and the last message she left was eerily vague: "I'll be back soon." The first responders searched the streets, the alleys, the park behind the high school where teenagers dared each other to trespass at night. Nothing. No sign, no struggle, no explanation. A purse sat on the curb, untouched, wallet inside. Her shoes, neatly placed beside it. It was as if she had simply been erased from existence. The first clue was not a clue at all. It was a question mark carved into the heart of a town that prided itself on neighborliness. The news spread like wildfire. Local radio repeated the details with a mix of horror and fascination, describing her disappearance in fragmented sentences that made listeners lean closer, afraid to blink. The morning papers carried her photo on the front page, her wide eyes staring into the camera, frozen in time, a silent scream that the ink could not capture. People whispered in grocery aisles, gas stations, and churches. Mothers clutched children tighter. Fathers checked the locks twice, thrice. It was a cold case before it even began, a puzzle with missing pieces that refused to be found. Investigators combed through every corner of Macon. Security cameras in the surrounding streets captured nothing but the slow crawl of an empty night. Neighbors reported odd sightings. A van parked at odd hours, a man walking the streets with no clear purpose, shadows in windows that seemed to vanish when approached. None of it led anywhere concrete, only speculation and unease. A letter, unsigned, arrived at the police station 2 weeks later. It read, "She's closer than you think." No address, no return name, just the cryptic sentence that would haunt officers for years. Fingerprints were smudged, the envelope shredded along the seams as if the sender feared discovery. Every lead turned cold, every witness account contradictory, every hope dwindling into despair. Emily's friends were interrogated, gently at first, then with increasing urgency. Memories were recounted under bright fluorescent lights, each recollection tinged with guilt, fear, or relief that it wasn't them. Yet, there was a pattern emerging, subtle and unsettling. Someone had watched, followed, perhaps planned this disappearance with meticulous patience. The detectives noted it, filed it under unknown suspect, and continued their relentless pursuit through a maze of dead ends. Each year that passed made the town's unease grow. The diner where Emily worked closed after a decade, the booths collecting dust and memories, the kitchen appliances gathering grime and echoes of laughter that once filled the air. By 2002, the case had gone cold, but the investigation never ceased. Detectives rotated through the files, each new officer haunted by the stark clarity of what was unknown. They scoured databases, cross-referenced missing persons reports, chased leads that seemed promising, but always dissolved into shadows. One officer, a man named Randall Pierce, became obsessed with the case, tracing Emily's last known interactions, studying her routines, revisiting her apartment for overlooked evidence. Dust-covered cabinets revealed nothing new. A journal, partially burned in the fireplace, contained half-formed thoughts, mundane complaints about work, notes about movies she liked, the kind of ordinary details that now felt like a lifeline to someone lost. Rumors began to stir in Macon. Some claimed to see Emily's ghost wandering the streets at night, a figure in a white dress flickering in headlights before disappearing. Others whispered of a neighbor with a dark past, a man who moved in and out of town too quickly, too quietly. The police pursued these leads, interrogating the transient man only to find he had an alibi, or perhaps he had vanished before the law could reach him. Every step forward led to 2 steps back. The town lived in a state of suspended anxiety, a constant hum of fear and fascination. Mothers told their daughters not to walk alone, teenagers dared each other to repeat the path Emily had taken, as if invoking the danger might reveal the truth. In 2005, a break, or what seemed like one, arrived in the form of a tip from a stranger. A man claimed to have seen Emily's image in a photograph tucked inside a book at a yard sale miles from Macon. Investigators traced the book's origins, examined the photograph, questioned the seller, and turned over every stone. The trail was thin, fragile, and ultimately led nowhere tangible. Still, it reignited the case, fueling a fire that refused to die in the hearts of those who refused to let Emily be forgotten. Over the years, new technologies promised breakthroughs. DNA testing became more sophisticated, databases grew, and cold case units gained access to tools that detectives in 2000 could only dream of. Pieces of evidence that had been untouched for a decade were re-examined: the envelope with the cryptic note, the fibers on her shoes, a fragment of hair in her purse. Nothing was conclusive, but the hope lingered, stubborn as weeds in cracked sidewalks. Macon's community meetings often ended with discussions of Emily Harper, citizens pressing local authorities for answers, demanding accountability for the fear that had embedded itself in the town's fabric. By 2010, Emily's parents had aged visibly, her mother's hair silvering, her father's hands shaking. They refused to leave Macon, determined to wait for closure, each passing year deepening the ache of absence. Local newspapers occasionally revisited the story, each article a reminder that some shadows never lifted. Every reporter who covered the case spoke of the town's quiet despair, the eerie sensation that everyone was watching, waiting for the day when the silence would finally break. The cold case had become legend, whispered about in bars, in classrooms, in the quiet corners of libraries. Teenagers who were infants when Emily disappeared now reached adulthood knowing nothing else but the story of the girl who vanished, a name repeated in hushed tones as if speaking it too loudly might summon answers, or, worse, repeat the tragedy. Detectives passed on files to one another, mentors teaching rookies the delicate art of hope in hopelessness, of patience in the face of a void. It was 2012 when a confession, small and tentative, surfaced in the form of an anonymous phone call. The voice trembled, hesitant, almost pleading, as it said, "I know what happened to Emily Harper." Detectives leaned in, careful, cautious, skeptical. The voice hung in the line like fog, half-truths floating in the silence. It would take years, persistence, and relentless questioning to unravel the confession fully. The details were chilling, the narrative dark and intimate, exposing corners of human cruelty that had lain hidden behind polite facades for over a decade. The confession, though, was not complete. Pieces remained missing. Shadows lingered. The town braced itself, sensing the revelation would not simply close a case, but open wounds thought dormant. By 2015, investigators had tied the voice to a man who had lived on the edge of town during Emily's disappearance, someone with no prior criminal record, no obvious motive, but a chilling presence in the testimonies that had been collected years earlier. He had moved quietly, watched unobtrusively, and acted when opportunity struck. When confronted, his demeanor was calm, almost bored, as if recounting events from memory rather than admitting guilt. The detectives documented every word, aware that the confession might finally illuminate the path that had remained shrouded for 15 years. And yet, the town waited. Each press release, each bulletin sent shivers down spines, the words, cold case, and confession dancing in headlines like sparks from a fire that refused to die. Even now, the memory of that night in 2000 haunts Macon. Every flickering streetlight, every distant siren, every whispered rumor carries the echo of Emily Harper. The town remembers the way the air felt that night, thick and oppressive, a warning of what was to come. And though the confession promises answers, it cannot erase the years of uncertainty, the shadows cast over ordinary lives, the collective anxiety of a community that once thought it knew safety. The cold case, though moving toward resolution, continues to ripple through Macon, a reminder that some mysteries linger longer than we expect, leaving scars on places and people alike. The confession alone did not bring relief, it brought tension, a rising pulse in a town that had long grown accustomed to fear. Investigators moved carefully, retracing paths, revisiting alleys, sidewalks, parking lots, places where Emily's shadow might still linger. Each step was meticulous, deliberate, because 15 years of silence had taught them that every detail, however minor, could crack the case wide open. The man, whose name remained guarded by law enforcement for months, spoke in fragments, half-truths, reluctant admissions. He described the night in a monotone voice that sent shivers down the spines of those listening, his words dripping with an ordinary cruelty that was horrifying precisely because it came from someone unremarkable, someone who could blend into a crowd. Emily Harper's last evening replayed in investigators' minds like a film reel, each frame more vivid than memory alone could allow. She had left the diner with a tired smile, her hair damp from humidity, purse clutched under her arm. She had waved to a friend, not knowing the hand she waved to would never again meet hers in safety. Witnesses who had once dismissed oddities now recounted them with trembling certainty. A van lingering at the corner of Vine Street, headlights flickering as if testing the darkness, a shadow moving against the grain of the streetlights. The details had been recorded in logs, typed into reports that sat untouched for years. Now, they became pieces of a mosaic that was beginning to take shape, jagged edges and all. The town itself seemed to hold its breath. Macon, with its quiet neighborhoods and chain-link fences, its small shops and overgrown lots, had learned to live with fear as a companion. Mothers whispered warnings at bus stops. Teenagers dared one another to retrace Emily's steps. Local journalists combed the archives for forgotten interviews, photographs, and rumors. Every news story, every snippet of tape, every notebook scribbled with observations became a potential thread in the tapestry of the investigation. Cold cases are not just files, they are living memories, restless spirits pressing for recognition. This one pressed with particular insistence, a reminder that time does not heal everything, and absence does not equate to closure. The confession prompted a re-evaluation of everything. Investigators revisited the initial reports, the police logs, the witness statements. In hindsight, there were signals that now screamed of their significance. The anonymous notes, the van, the man who seemed to drift in and out of Emily's life without notice. Each clue, ignored or misunderstood in its time, now demanded scrutiny. Detectives held long, quiet sessions in dimly lit offices, tracing timelines, cross-referencing names, reconstructing movements. It was painstaking work, a chess game where every pawn, every knight, every overlooked square might be critical. And through it all, Emily remained central, a spectral presence guiding the search for truth, her absence a constant, haunting reminder that the stakes were real. By late 2013, forensic technology had advanced significantly. DNA analysis, once primitive, now allowed for re-examination of items from Emily's purse, the fibers from her shoes, even the envelope with the cryptic note. Each sample became a potential breakthrough. Laboratories worked with meticulous care, every result verified multiple times. The detectives waited, sometimes for hours in sterile rooms, sometimes pacing hallways lined with case files and photographs. The tension was suffocating, One slip, one misstep, could send the investigation spiraling again into darkness. And yet, hope remained. Not the naive hope of the early days, but the calculated, patient hope of those who had learned to survive in uncertainty. Community involvement was complicated. By now, the disappearance of Emily Harper had embedded itself into the collective consciousness. Local radio hosts revisited the story, inviting listeners to share memories, tips, or theories. Some calls were helpful, others led nowhere, but the pattern was undeniable. Macon had never forgotten. The town had aged with the case. Children of the year 2000 were teenagers now, asking questions about what happened, demanding explanations that had never come. Residents reported the mundane alongside the bizarre. A light on in an abandoned house, a door creaking with no wind, a figure glimpsed through a window that vanished when approached. Everything was scrutinized, catalogued, analyzed. The fabric of the town had changed, threads of fear and vigilance woven permanently into its texture. The man's confession continued to unspool in fragments. He spoke of planning, of watching, of exploiting small, overlooked moments. His recollections were methodical yet chillingly casual, as if detailing an errand rather than a crime. He described Emily's movements, her interactions, the routes she preferred. He explained how he avoided detection, how he had vanished when opportunities arose for her to escape notice. There was no passion, no remorse, only the mechanical execution of a plan. The detectives shivered, noting that this level of detachment explained why the case had remained unsolved for so long. Ordinary cruelty, when cloaked in ordinary routine, becomes nearly invisible. It is the kind of evil that hides in plain sight, slipping between the cracks of everyday life. The investigation team retraced every detail, sometimes in silence, sometimes speaking in low tones that carried through the empty precinct. Streets were revisited at night, timing intersections, noting shadows, retracing Emily's last known steps with forensic precision. Photographs were taken, measurements logged, audio recordings captured the slightest ambient noise. The detectives imagined every possible scenario: abduction, voluntary disappearance, misdirection. Each theory was weighed, discarded, reconsidered. Years of frustration tempered their urgency. They knew patience, vigilance, and persistence were their greatest tools. Alongside the methodical work, the human cost of the cold case remained visible. Emily's parents, weathered by years of uncertainty, attended each hearing, each press conference, their eyes reflecting hope mingled with exhaustion. They clung to every word, every update, knowing that resolution might come, but fearing the details would be too painful to hear. Friends, now adults, recounted memories of Emily with aching nostalgia. The diner where she had worked became a shrine in memory alone, a space frozen in time, long closed but vivid in imagination. Community gatherings occasionally paused to acknowledge anniversaries, candles lit in her honor, a collective acknowledgement that even absent bodies, a person could hold sway over the living. By 2014, the confession had solidified enough to allow investigators to map out potential crime scenes, and they discovered locations previously overlooked: wooded areas near town, abandoned houses, and riverbanks. Each site was examined with care, forensic teams documenting soil, vegetation, and remnants that had escaped notice in 2000. The town's landscape, familiar and mundane, now felt sinister. Shadows lengthened in the detectives' minds, every bend in the road a possible hiding place, every rustling leaf a reminder of Emily's fate. Cold cases demand that ordinary places are reinterpreted, that familiarity becomes suspicion. In Macon, every streetlight, every parking lot carried a memory of her absence. The confession also triggered a review of law enforcement procedures from the year 2000. Interviews were re-examined, statements compared, inconsistencies highlighted. Small errors, overlooked in the urgency of a new disappearance, now became significant. Miscommunications between departments, delayed responses, assumptions about the suspect's identity, all were reconsidered. Investigators realized that while time had allowed fear to settle into the community, it had also allowed the case to gain depth and texture. Each misstep, each gap, each question unasked provided a learning opportunity, a thread toward eventual clarity. Even with this progress, the case's emotional weight remained. Macon, a town used to routine and familiarity, now existed under a new tension. Residents moved through their days with a quiet awareness, eyes alert, conversations tinged with unease. The disappearance of Emily Harper had changed the rhythm of life, embedding caution into habit, suspicion into neighborliness. And as the investigation pressed forward, the detectives themselves were not immune. Sleepless nights, obsessive review of files, repeated visits to crime scenes, all weighed heavily. Yet, the pursuit of truth became a ritual, a necessary obsession that promised, at long last, a confrontation with the shadows of the past. And so the years continued, each one adding layers of detail, clarity, and dread. The confession, fragments though it was, had provided a beacon in the darkness. It promised answers, but the darkness it revealed was chillingly expansive. Emily Harper's story was no longer just a missing person case. It had become a reflection on the fragility of safety, the lurking nature of danger, and the enduring strength of human persistence. The cold case, long dormant, had begun to breathe again, and the town of Macon, Georgia, had learned that even after 15 years, the past does not easily let go. By 2015, the investigation had entered a new phase, one that blurred the lines between obsession and desperation, between meticulous procedure and instinctual hunch. The confession, still fragmented, demanded corroboration. Detectives returned to Emily Harper's last known route along Vine Street, walking slowly in the humid Georgia heat, imagining the way her shoes had struck the pavement, how her shoulders had slumped from a day's fatigue. Every crack in the sidewalk, every flickering street lamp was catalogued, measured, photographed. Shadows shifted as if mocking them, long limbs cast by trees and telephone poles twisting across asphalt like fingers pointing at truths long hidden. It was a nightmarish familiarity. A town that seemed safe by day now became an intricate map of potential horrors at dusk. The man's admissions described movement patterns so subtle that officers had initially overlooked them. He had followed, he had observed, he had waited. Each choice was deliberate, unhurried, a patient predator masquerading as a neighbor, a passerby, someone ordinary. The detectives reconstructed his movements using a combination of witness accounts, phone records, and the small, overlooked evidence tucked away in filing cabinets for 15 years. Every call Emily made, every route she took, every familiar street corner was re-examined. The ordinary streets of Macon transformed under their scrutiny into a labyrinth of danger, a stage on which fear had played out unnoticed, rehearsed for years in silence. Community members became uneasy allies. A local postman recalled noticing a man loitering near Emily's apartment complex in 2000. A waitress at the diner remembered a customer who always lingered a little too long near the booths, watching rather than ordering. Each recollection was minor in isolation, but critical when pieced together, threads in a tapestry that depicted a chilling reality. Detectives compiled these fragments meticulously, cross-referencing, verifying, constructing a timeline that finally began to make sense. Every shadowy observation, every minor inconsistency, every neighbor's uneasy glance was now a clue. The town itself became part of the investigation, its memories resurrected, examined, and catalogued with painstaking care. Forensic teams revisited items long ignored. Emily's purse, shoes, and personal effects were examined under the harsh light of modern technology. Fibers previously deemed irrelevant were now subjected to chemical and microscopic analysis. The envelope containing the cryptic note was scanned, scanned again, scanned with every advancement in imaging. Tiny residues, fingerprints almost invisible, were teased from the paper. Each discovery seemed to stretch time itself, connecting past and present, filling gaps left by years of uncertainty. The science moved slowly but surely, relentless, and with each small breakthrough, the community's collective anxiety grew. Hopes rose and fell like tides, carrying with them memories of a young woman who had vanished on a warm summer night 15 years ago. The suspect, now identified and monitored, presented a chilling normality. He attended work, ran errands, smiled at neighbors, and passed unnoticed through streets that once whispered warnings. That very ordinariness, the way he blended seamlessly into everyday life, made the confession all the more horrifying. Detectives observed, tracked, waited for moments when his routine broke down, when curiosity or arrogance might expose him further. And still, the case was delicate, the balance between legal procedure and psychological pressure razor thin. One wrong move could allow him to disappear again, undoing years of painstaking reconstruction. Macon itself had aged with the case. Houses had been sold and resold, trees grown taller, roads repaved, yet beneath this veneer of normalcy, the collective memory of Emily's disappearance persisted. Teenagers now remembered her name not from stories, but from personal experience. A cautionary tale repeated in hallways, a specter in the minds of those who walked home after dark. Community events occasionally acknowledged the anniversary of her disappearance. Candles flickered in darkened living rooms, whispers carried across playgrounds, the story of Emily Harper living in the collective memory as both warning and lament. Fear had been embedded, inseparable from memory, shaping behavior and perception, and now, after 15 years, hope cautiously pushed its way through. As investigators pieced together the suspect's confession, details emerged that had previously been unimaginable. He described Emily's reactions, her awareness, her struggle to evade detection. He spoke of minor errors he had made in timing, small hesitations that allowed her to momentarily escape notice. It was a procedural horror, an anatomy of fear and control executed with unnerving precision. The detectives took notes with steady hands, documenting every word, aware that the minutiae of these recollections could provide legal leverage and closure. The confession was not just a narrative, it was a roadmap into a mind that had been patient, calculating, and terrifyingly ordinary. Public attention escalated. Newspapers updated readers with cautious reports, cold case advances, confession verified, investigation continues. The language was careful, restrained, yet each phrase carried an undercurrent of anxiety, reverberating through the town. Radio talk shows invited listeners to share memories, to revisit fears, to speculate on outcomes. Social media, new and growing, amplified the story. Even those who had not known Emily personally felt the creeping dread of unresolved absence. Every mention, every comment, every post reminded Macon of what had been lost and what might finally be revealed. In parallel, detectives began reconstructing the night itself. Emily's last walk, the faint hum of distant traffic, the crickets in overgrown yards, the occasional barking dog, every detail was considered. Investigators imagined her senses, the smell of hot asphalt, the damp clinging of humidity to her skin, the feeling of being watched without understanding why. They considered her fear, her potential attempts to escape, the split-second decisions that had determined her fate. Each reconstruction brought them closer to understanding, closer to a resolution that had eluded the town for so long. And yet, each insight brought a fresh wave of horror, the realization that the ordinary man in the confession had been a silent witness to ordinary life while committing extraordinary cruelty. The town reacted in subtle ways. Parents accompanied children to school and back, neighbors checked in on each other, and streets that once felt safe in routine daylight carried a renewed vigilance. Emily's disappearance had been absorbed into the consciousness of Macon, shaping behavior in ways both obvious and subtle. Streets and sidewalks, homes and parks, all carried the residue of absence, a lingering anxiety that had never fully dissipated. And now, with the confession, those residues were illuminated, their contours sharper, their presence undeniable. The past refused to be silent. It demanded recognition, demanded confrontation, demanded acknowledgement of the darkness that had thrived unnoticed. Investigators also faced an internal struggle, balancing patience with urgency, diligence with empathy. They needed the confession to hold under scrutiny, to withstand cross-examination, to produce justice that would resonate beyond mere procedural closure. Weeks turned into months as they cross-referenced every statement, verified timelines, and examined physical evidence. Each verification was a delicate dance, a careful orchestration designed to prevent error and maintain credibility. Their lives intertwined with the case, their consciousness filled with Emily's presence, the shadow of her disappearance casting long, unrelenting lines through their daily routines. By the end of 2015, the web of evidence began to solidify. Corroborative witness statements aligned with the suspect's timeline. Forensic reanalysis revealed matches that had been impossible to detect in 2000. Small, overlooked details, the angle of a footprint, the type of soil on a shoe, a fiber in a discarded jacket, finally converged into a coherent, chilling narrative. The detectives knew the breakthrough was imminent. The town of Macon waited, a collective anxiety building as the story that had haunted 15 years of quiet life approached its most decisive chapter. Even as life continued, children going to school, workers commuting, neighbors exchanging small talk, the undercurrent of expectation ran deep, a tension that could not be shaken. And yet, the cold case retained its grip. The confession, even corroborated, could not erase the years of uncertainty, the ripple effects on the town, the emotional weight carried by Emily's family and friends. The detectives understood that resolution would not merely be legal, it would be psychological, emotional, communal. Closure was not a moment, but a process, unfolding in public scrutiny, in private grief, in cautious celebration tempered by trauma. Macon itself seemed to exhale, wary of relief, conscious that the past had left indelible marks that no confession could entirely erase. The breakthrough came quietly, almost imperceptibly, in the hum of fluorescent lights and the scratch of pens on paper. Detectives had assembled the pieces, thread by thread, shadow by shadow, and for the first time, the night of Emily Harper's disappearance began to take on a chilling clarity. It wasn't one single piece of evidence that cracked the case, but a confluence, the confession, witness recollections revisited with fresh eyes, forensic details once dismissed, and the long-neglected fibers and traces of her presence that modern science could finally analyze. The air in the precinct was thick, tense, each officer aware that 15 years of uncertainty were about to collide with harsh, unforgiving truth. Emily's apartment was revisited, the walls, the floors, the closets all scrutinized as if the missing moments of that June evening could still be coaxed from their surfaces. Dust, sunlight, shadows, everything was measured, recorded, photographed. Officers imagined her movements, how she had gathered her purse, pulled on her jacket, stepped toward the night, unaware of the eyes tracking her, the silent predator threading himself through the backdrop of ordinary life. Every creak of a floorboard, every gust of wind through a cracked window seemed to whisper secrets long hidden. The town's quiet streets, once mundane, now bore the memory of her absence, the invisible imprint of a path never completed, a life interrupted. Witnesses were re-interviewed. Memories once vague now sharpened under patient questioning. The postman recalled the van parked at the corner, its engine idling too long, lights flickering. A neighbor described the sound of footsteps outside her window, slow and deliberate, pausing, retreating, vanishing into darkness. Minor details coalesced into a timeline, a sequence of events that revealed a chilling choreography. Emily's every move, every glance, every hesitation was noted in their reconstruction. The detectives walked her path, step by step, hour by hour, feeling the weight of time, the oppressive tension of a night that had seemed ordinary, but had contained extraordinary evil. The suspect's confession, initially fragmentary, now aligned with these recollections. He described waiting at Shadow's edges, choosing moments when curiosity or fatigue had made Emily vulnerable. He spoke with clinical detachment, recounting each action, each decision, as if it were a logistical exercise. Officers noted the lack of remorse, the precision of planning, the patience that had allowed him to remain unseen for 15 years. It was ordinary evil, the kind that lives quietly, blends into neighborhoods, and preys upon trust and routine. The town had always sensed the possibility, the faint unease that accompanies unspoken danger, but nothing prepared them for the scale of it, the meticulousness that had allowed a person to vanish unnoticed. Community members watched as the investigation progressed. Families whispered warnings anew, parents holding hands a little tighter, teenagers exchanging cautious glances as they walked past familiar corners. Emily Harper's absence had already reshaped the town's rhythm, but the revelation of planning and observation added a layer of dread that permeated daily life. Conversations stopped abruptly when the subject arose. Even the casual exchange at the grocery store carried a tension beneath its surface. Macon was alive with memory, a town living alongside ghosts, and the confession had illuminated one particularly dark presence. Forensic breakthroughs came one after another. DNA matches, fiber analysis, and digital enhancements of old photographs allowed officers to reconstruct the suspect's interactions with the environment. The envelope containing the cryptic note revealed a faint fingerprint, one that matched the man who had confessed. Fibers from Emily's clothing, long preserved, were identified in the van he had used. Every small detail provided another layer of confirmation, building an irrefutable case piece by piece. The detectives, exhausted yet relentless, felt a cautious satisfaction, tempered by the understanding that closure was not simply a matter of evidence, but of confronting a community's long-buried trauma. In parallel, the town's psyche was slowly reshaping itself around these developments. Streets and parks became locations of reflection and vigilance. Neighbors exchanged information, recalled memories, observed routines. Some old fears resurfaced, how ordinary moments can conceal extraordinary threats, but they were now coupled with a sense of potential justice, a glimmer of hope that the darkness could finally be confronted. Emily Harper's story, long a source of grief and anxiety, was becoming a narrative of revelation, a reminder that persistence, memory, and careful observation could pierce even the densest shroud of uncertainty. As investigators prepared for a confrontation with the suspect, the psychological weight intensified. They rehearsed interviews, anticipating denials, obfuscations, and manipulations. 15 years of unanswered questions hung in the air, each moment of silence in the interrogation room stretching unbearably. The suspect's calm, methodical demeanor contrasted sharply with the detective's barely concealed urgency. Every detail needed confirmation. Every statement needed verification. The officers were acutely aware that one misstep could unravel the painstaking reconstruction, allow ambiguity to return, and deny Emily the justice she had been denied for so long. The confession revealed unsettling details about the suspect's mindset. He spoke of tracking her habits, noting routes, observing patterns. He described watching from cars, shadowing from doorways, blending seamlessly into ordinary life, while orchestrating a disappearance. The meticulous observation, the patient manipulation, revealed a chilling psychological portrait. Investigators felt the weight of his calculations, the extraordinary ordinariness that allowed a single person to disrupt a community for 15 years. The man's account illuminated the darkness of everyday life, the hidden potential for malevolence lurking in seemingly mundane choices. Emily's parents remained at the center of this storm. Their lives, frozen by uncertainty, were now thrust into the public eye. They attended briefings, absorbed updates, watched the painstaking gathering of evidence. Their grief was layered with cautious anticipation, a fragile hope that the confessions and corroborations would finally close a chapter left open far too long. Friends and former co-workers observed quietly, their memories of Emily mingling with relief, fear, and lingering sadness. The town collectively held its breath, acknowledging that closure, even when approached, might be partial, leaving scars that time would not erase. Investigators revisited environmental cues from that June night. The smell of wet asphalt, the way wind shifted leaves, the patterns of streetlights, all details that had seemed irrelevant in 2000, were now critical in reconstructing her path. They considered how the suspect had manipulated routine, exploited predictable behavior, and how Emily's instincts might have guided her through a night of growing tension. Each layer of detail, meticulously documented, added depth to the case, revealing a landscape of fear carefully crafted and long endured. The town's ordinary geography, every street and alley, had become a testament to both vulnerability and persistence. By late 2015, the pieces began to fit seamlessly. Witness statements, forensic results, and the confession's timeline converged. The puzzle that had eluded resolution for 15 years now displayed an outline, sharp and undeniable. The detectives sensed that the final act was approaching. Macon itself seemed to hold its breath, the town suspended between memory and revelation. Every corner, every shadow, every creaking board carried the tension of anticipation. Residents whispered, revisited old fears, and hoped for justice tempered with the knowledge that the past could not fully be undone. The cold case, once dormant, was now fully awake, and its awakening carried the weight of years of anxiety, grief, and relentless human attention. The night air in Macon carried a tension that had long lain dormant, the kind of tension that makes the familiar streets feel unfamiliar, makes the ordinary unbearable. Detectives prepared for the final confrontation with the man whose confession had shaken the town. 15 years of silence had hardened him, shaped him, allowed him to live without scrutiny, but now he was exposed, the ordinary predator stripped bare by meticulous investigation. Officers briefed each other with hushed voices, reviewing timelines, cross-referencing alibis, rechecking every tiny fragment of evidence. Every detail mattered. Every hesitation could be fatal to the case, and every step forward carried the weight of a decade and a half of unanswered questions. Emily Harper's disappearance had left scars not just on her family, but on the entire community. Parents whispered warnings at bus stops, neighbors locked doors with renewed caution, teenagers dared each other to tread the streets she had walked that night, some trying to summon courage, some trying to summon fear. Memories had calcified into ritual, a collective vigilance born from trauma. Each citizen carried a fragment of the past, a piece of the unsolved puzzle, and now, all those fragments pointed toward confrontation, toward revelation, toward the first chance at closure in 15 years. The town's ordinary rhythm had been suspended, replaced by a pulse of anticipation and dread. Inside the precinct, detectives reviewed the confession again, noting the precision of its timeline, the calculated calm in the suspect's voice, the chilling normality of his actions. He had observed, he had manipulated, he had waited, and in doing so had reshaped the lives of countless people. Every word he had spoken was parsed for meaning, corroborated against witnesses, aligned with forensic evidence. The pressure to proceed correctly was immense. One misstep could allow ambiguity to creep back, could undo years of painstaking work, could let him retreat into the shadows once more. The room was thick with anticipation, the kind that makes time stretch, makes every tick of the clock echo like a heartbeat in the chest. The suspect's routine had been ordinary, almost banal, and that had been his shield. He had walked the streets, smiled at neighbors, disappeared behind the anonymity of everyday life. Detectives imagined his movements that night, each decision, each pause, each calculated step, all feeding the narrative of fear that had gripped Macon for 15 years. The confession was a blueprint, a detailed map of human cruelty hidden in plain sight. Investigators retraced the narrative with painstaking care, ensuring that every claim could be verified, every statement substantiated. They knew that to confront him successfully, they had to be precise, unyielding, and patient. The town itself seemed to breathe in anticipation. Streets felt alive with memory, every corner recalling Emily's absence, every flickering streetlight a reminder of fear endured. Community members watched and waited, some hoping for answers, some fearing the confirmation of the darkness that had lurked unnoticed. The absence of Emily had reshaped Macon, embedding caution into its rhythms, suspicion into ordinary interactions. Parents checked doors, neighbors watched the sidewalks, and young adults, who had grown up with her story, measured their own steps along paths she had once taken. The town, once confident in its familiarity, now existed in a state of tense awareness, a collective anxiety sharpened by the confession. Detectives planned the confrontation meticulously. The suspect would be approached in a controlled environment, carefully monitored, every possible outcome anticipated. Psychological tactics were discussed, pressure points, phrasing, pacing, the subtle interplay of observation and interrogation. Every officer involved knew that success depended not just on evidence, but on reading the human element, on understanding the mind behind 15 years of deception. The suspect's calm had been maintained through ordinary life, but now, under scrutiny, the layers of carefully constructed normality were beginning to crack. Emily's parents, though shielded from some of the graphic details, were present in the background, absorbing updates with tense hope. Their grief, sustained for over a decade, was a constant shadow over the proceedings, but now mingled with cautious anticipation. Friends and co-workers of Emily recalled her energy, her laughter, the way she moved through the world with unassuming grace. Memories, long tucked away, returned vividly, layering emotional intensity over the procedural mechanics of investigation. The town's collective memory and the detectives' methodical work converged, creating a pressure cooker of expectation and dread. The suspect's confession had revealed the terrifying ordinariness of his methods. He had observed patterns, exploited routines, waited for small mistakes, used normality as camouflage. Detectives reconstructed the night in detail, the steps along Vine Street, the flicker of headlights, the sound of distant traffic, the subtle cues Emily may have sensed but could not fully interpret. Each moment of the past was mapped, timed, analyzed. The ordinary world had been manipulated into a stage for fear, and now, investigators sought to reclaim control, to restore order, to finally bring resolution to a narrative that had been suspended for 15 years. The tension in Macon was palpable. Even the small details of everyday life, the mailman's route, the barking of dogs, the flicker of a neon sign in a corner store, felt charged with the memory of absence. The collective consciousness of the town had long carried Emily's story, and now that story was moving toward confrontation, toward revelation. Every resident felt it in subtle ways. Parents held their children a little closer, neighbors glanced at the streets with renewed awareness, teenagers navigated familiar paths with heightened caution. The confession had reopened a wound, and the town waited, anxious yet aware that healing required acknowledgement of pain. As the investigation moved toward execution, detectives rehearsed every scenario. They anticipated the suspect's responses, prepared for denial, obfuscation, or manipulation. 15 years of unanswered questions created a charged atmosphere, every silence in the precinct thick with expectation. The suspect's calm, clinical detachment would be tested, every word weighed against corroborated evidence, every gesture scrutinized for authenticity. Success depended on precision, patience, and psychological insight. Failure was not an option. 15 years of absence and uncertainty demanded resolution. Meanwhile, forensic teams continued to verify evidence, reanalyze materials, and connect threads from decades-old files. DNA, fibers, photographs, and eyewitness accounts were aligned with the confession, producing a web of confirmation that grew more robust with each passing day. The convergence of science, human memory, and confession was forming a narrative so precise that the town itself could almost feel the shape of the truth. Macon, 4 years suspended in anxiety and fear, now sensed the contours of revelation approaching, a combination of dread and cautious relief threading through daily life. The psychological dimension of the confrontation loomed large. Detectives recognized that the suspect had cultivated patience and normality over years, embedding himself in the fabric of Macon without detection. Now, under scrutiny, he would be forced into a space where ordinary detachment could not shield him. Investigators planned to exploit every inconsistency, every hesitation, every subtle behavioral cue. The confession had given them the skeleton, they needed to flesh it out in real time, to ensure that truth could finally be codified and justice served. The final stage of preparation was intensive. The precinct buzzed with activity, officers reviewing timelines, evidence, and strategies repeatedly. Psychological profiles were studied, patterns of past deception analyzed. Every potential misstep, every avenue of denial, every method of manipulation was anticipated. Emily Harper's story, once a ghostly absence in the streets of Macon, was about to be confronted directly, the ordinary predator exposed, the town's long-held anxiety given the framework for resolution. Every step, every breath, every word mattered. The past, present, and future collided in anticipation, shaping a moment that would resonate far beyond the walls of the precinct. The town waited. The streets of Macon, quiet yet vigilant, bore witness to a collective consciousness suspended in anticipation. Parents, neighbors, friends, and strangers alike felt the tension, subtle but pervasive, threading through daily routines. The ordinary had been punctured by extraordinary absence, and now, the extraordinary revelation was at hand. Emily Harper's name, repeated in whispers for 15 years, was poised to carry both closure and confrontation. The cold case, once dormant, was fully alive, and the town's heartbeat, synchronized with the pulse of investigation, marked the approach of truth. The morning air carried an unusual stillness, as if Macon itself were holding its breath. Streets were quiet, almost too quiet, the usual hum of life replaced by anticipation that clung to every tree, every mailbox, every cracked sidewalk. Detectives gathered, reviewing timelines, checking evidence one last time, rehearsing conversations they might have with the man who had lived unnoticed among them for 15 years. He was ordinary, unremarkable, the kind of neighbor who waved and disappeared, whose actions had never drawn suspicion. And yet, his confession now loomed over the town like a shadow that refused to dissipate. Every officer knew this was a turning point, one misstep, one wrong question, and the delicate thread of 15 years of investigation could unravel. The suspect arrived at the precinct quietly, as if entering a routine meeting rather than the epicenter of a community's collective trauma. His calm demeanor unsettled the seasoned detectives, trained to spot deception, manipulation, and aggression. He sat, hands folded, posture relaxed, eyes betraying nothing. Every detail, his clothing, the faint scent of cologne, the rhythm of his breathing, was noted. The air seemed to thicken, charged with years of unanswered questions, the weight of a cold case that had haunted Macon's streets, its families, and its institutions. Silence stretched, broken only by the low hum of fluorescent lights and the rustle of papers, each sound amplified, resonating with the gravity of what was about to unfold. The interrogation began cautiously, the questions precise, deliberate. Officers asked about the night Emily Harper disappeared, probing the timeline, the locations, the methods, the decisions. The man answered calmly, his voice devoid of emotion, the cadence mechanical, rehearsed. He described movements that had gone unnoticed, choices that exploited routine, and observations that preyed on predictability. Every word was weighed, every pause analyzed. Detectives watched for inconsistencies, for slips, for anything that would betray the ordinary mask he wore so convincingly. The quiet confidence with which he recounted events made the horror of the night all the more palpable. Cruelty so methodical becomes terrifying precisely because it seems normal. Emily's parents, present but shielded from the most harrowing details, listened with taut expressions, every muscle taut, every breath shallow. Their grief, long dormant yet never forgotten, resurfaced with the confessions, every revelation slicing through the years of absence. Friends and former co-workers recalled her energy, her laughter, the way she had moved through the world with unassuming grace. Their memories became emotional anchors, grounding the investigators in the human stakes behind the procedural details. The suspect, in contrast, remained an unflinching observer, recounting actions as if narrating an ordinary sequence of events. His calmness amplified the tension, the quiet horror settling over the room like a thick fog. The detectives revisited every minor detail from the night of her disappearance: the flicker of a streetlight, the rustle of leaves, the distant echo of traffic, even the way shadows fell across sidewalks. Emily's path, previously obscured, now unfolded under the scrutiny of methodical investigation. Each step, each hesitation, each instinctive move was reconstructed. They considered how she had sensed danger, how her reactions, however fleeting, shaped the trajectory of her disappearance. The town itself, with streets and parks and familiar corners, became an intricate map of fear, memory, and human calculation. Ordinary landscapes carried extraordinary significance. Forensic confirmations continued to emerge. DNA analysis, fiber matching, and digital reconstructions aligned seamlessly with the suspect's confession. Each piece of evidence, long dormant, now became a critical link, validating the narrative that had remained hidden for over a decade. Officers meticulously documented every confirmation, every cross-check, understanding that this evidence was more than procedural. It was the lifeline of justice, the tangible proof that could provide closure to a community suspended in time. Macon itself seemed to sense the shift, the quiet streets now imbued with a sense of impending revelation. The suspect's demeanor began to show subtle cracks under sustained questioning. A pause here, a flicker of hesitation there, minor tells that experienced detectives could detect even in a man so practiced in calm. Each nuance was noted, catalogued, and used to press further, to challenge recollections, to test consistency. 15 years of normality had shielded him, but the concentrated scrutiny, the relentless attention to detail, and the convergence of forensic and testimonial evidence began to erode that shield. The ordinary predator was now under extraordinary pressure. Emily's parents clung to fragments of hope, their presence in the room both grounding and charged with emotional intensity. Each new detail from the suspect's account reshaped their understanding, adding clarity, but also a renewed ache. Memories of Emily, her smile, her gestures, the small quirks that made her unmistakably herself, intertwined with the procedural exposition of her disappearance. The juxtaposition was almost unbearable, the human warmth of the daughter they had lost meeting the clinical, methodical narrative of her final hours. Yet this confrontation was necessary, the path toward resolution unavoidable. Community vigilance had also intensified. Residents observed streets, revisited memories, shared recollections, all contributing subtle, but critical pieces of understanding. The ordinary patterns of life, once ignored, were now understood as integral components in a puzzle that spanned years. Parents recounted late-night walks, teenagers remembered strange glances, neighbors reflected on fleeting observations. Each memory, no matter how minor, became a critical element in reconstructing the events of that night. The town itself had become an auxiliary investigative force, a living archive of human observation and recollection. The psychological interplay during interrogation was intense. Detectives employed strategies to elicit inconsistencies, probing not just actions, but motivations, intentions, and emotions, or the lack thereof. The suspect, skilled in ordinary deception, faced an unprecedented environment, unwavering attention, corroborated evidence, and a collective human consciousness pressing through layers of normality to confront the truth. Each interaction, each question, each response became part of an intricate dance, the culmination of years of careful observation, patience, and relentless pursuit. Emily Harper's presence lingered throughout the precinct. Her absence, her memory, her story, and her impact shaped every word, every observation, every moment of deliberation. Detectives visualized her steps, the routes she preferred, the environment she navigated, and the subtle signs of danger she may have sensed but could not escape. Every aspect of her disappearance, once lost to the fog of time, was being reconstructed with a precision that rendered the past vividly present. The town, too, experienced this resonance, the collective consciousness now aligned with the investigative momentum. As the confrontation neared its most decisive moments, the suspect's calmness faltered. Micro-expressions betrayed the tension he had hidden for years, a twitch, a slight tightening of his jaw, a pause longer than the others. The detectives noticed, leveraging these cracks to deepen scrutiny, challenge recollections, and extract clarity. Each step was deliberate, careful, measured against the weight of 15 years of absence, fear, and unanswered questions. The ordinary man, the silent observer of a community for over a decade, was now being fully confronted by both law and memory. The town's anticipation mirrored the tension within the precinct. Streets, homes, schools, and businesses all carried the echo of Emily's story. Parents, neighbors, and friends felt the charge of impending revelation in subtle ways, reflected in cautious conversations, careful observation, and quiet reflection. The once dormant cold case had awakened fully, demanding not only legal resolution, but communal acknowledgement of fear, loss, and endurance. Every resident, knowingly or unknowingly, was a participant in the resolution of a story that had long shaped their lives. And so, the stage was set. 15 years of absence, uncertainty, fear, and grief were converging in one room, in one confrontation. Emily Harper's story, once a ghostly presence in Macon streets, was now central, undeniable, inescapable. The confession had opened the door, and the combined weight of forensic evidence, witness recollection, and methodical investigation pushed it wide. The cold case, long dormant, was alive, and the town, the detectives, and the family were poised at the threshold of revelation, justice, and the lingering shadows that even truth could not fully erase. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the overhead lights, and the barely perceptible shuffling of papers. The suspect sat across from detectives, the air thick with tension, years of accumulated fear, and anticipation pressing down on everyone present. 15 years of unanswered questions, of whispers in hallways and shadows on streets, all coalesced in this one space. His eyes betrayed nothing, yet the subtle tightening of his jaw, the way his fingers drummed lightly on the table, hinted at a controlled agitation beneath the surface. Detectives knew this was the moment when patience, precision, and psychological insight would intersect, when the years of meticulous investigation would be tested against human cunning. Detectives began with careful questions, probing the night of Emily Harper's disappearance. Time seemed to stretch, each inquiry a scalpel cutting through the layers of ordinary deception. He answered calmly, with methodical precision, recounting every movement, every observation, every minute detail with the detached monotony of someone narrating an unremarkable errand. Yet within the detachment, there was an unmistakable calculation, a sense of pride in the meticulous orchestration of events, and an awareness of how close he had come to being discovered over the years. Every pause, every inflection was noted, scrutinized, catalogued. Emily's parents watched from a corner, shielded yet intimately connected to the moment. Their eyes were fixed, their bodies taut with emotion, their hearts carrying 15 years of unanswered questions and imagined scenarios. Every word from the suspect was a strike, every admission or omission a twist in the narrative that had haunted their lives. Friends and neighbors, now gathered in observant silence, felt the gravity of revelation pressing into their consciousness. Macon itself seemed to hold its breath, streets and houses resonating with memory and anticipation, the ordinary world transformed by the extraordinary events unfolding behind these precinct walls. The suspect described the night with clinical clarity, watching, following, waiting for the right moment. He admitted to choosing her routes, monitoring her habits, exploiting moments of predictability. Each revelation was a calculated horror, the kind that creeps not from sudden violence, but from careful observation, patience, and the perverse satisfaction of control. Detectives documented everything, aware that corroboration from forensic evidence and witness statements would solidify the narrative, transforming confession into irrefutable truth. The ordinary had been weaponized, the everyday turned into a landscape of fear and manipulation. As questions pressed deeper, subtle shifts appeared. Micro-expressions, fleeting glances, the tightening around his eyes, tiny cracks in the armor of composure that detectives had long anticipated. Each cue was amplified in their minds, a confirmation that the confession had not been rehearsed in its entirety. Officers leaned forward, probing further, balancing pressure with patience, extracting narrative while maintaining the legal integrity of the case. 15 years of hidden behavior were now fully exposed, every movement and decision analyzed in real time. Emily Harper's presence was palpable, an invisible force shaping the interrogation. Detectives visualized her steps, the rhythm of her walk, the faint sounds she might have heard, the shadows she could not escape. Every detail of that summer night, long obscured by time and uncertainty, was now reconstructed with precision. The suspect's narrative interwove with physical evidence, fibers, fingerprints, and traces long preserved but unexamined until modern technology could render them meaningful. Science, memory, and confession converged, illuminating a story that had been dormant for 15 years. Community whispers, broadcast through social media and local radio, seemed to echo within the precinct walls. The town of Macon had long carried Emily's story, a spectral presence threading through conversations, parenting, and street patrols. Now, that story manifested in the room before the detectives and the suspect, bridging the gap between collective memory and procedural reality. Each resident's recollection, each neighbor's small observation, each long-forgotten call to authorities became part of the evidence, reinforcing the narrative, pressing the suspect into undeniable acknowledgement of his actions. The suspect continued, recounting how he had avoided detection, blending into ordinary life with remarkable skill. Neighbors, friends, co-workers, all had unknowingly observed him, smiled at him, trusted him, and never suspected the darkness that had lurked beneath ordinary gestures. Detectives listened intently, piecing together not just actions, but the psychology behind them, patience, observation, exploitation of human trust, and meticulous calculation. The horror was amplified by ordinariness. Evil had been hidden in plain sight, and now the town's collective memory was aligned against it. Emily's parents flinched as he described minor details they had never known, small habits, the faint scent of her perfume, the way she carried her bag, the route she preferred. Each revelation carried weight, merging grief with newfound clarity, the unimaginable horror of the night rendered real by factual detail. Friends recalled her laughter, her warmth, her presence, now juxtaposed against the mechanical recounting of her final hours. The contrast intensified the emotional resonance, embedding the gravity of the crime deep into the minds of everyone present. The detectives pressed further, reconstructing the path of that night step by step. Vine Street, the diner, the corner where a van had lingered, every location, every movement, every shadow was interrogated, analyzed, and mapped. Forensic evidence reinforced the narrative, fibers on clothing, soil on shoes, fingerprints, and digital enhancements of archived photographs converged with testimony. Each detail was validated, creating a web of undeniable connection. The suspect, once confident in his ordinariness, was now confronted with irrefutable proof of his presence, his actions, and his manipulation of the ordinary world. Psychological pressure intensified. The suspect's calmness faltered in microseconds, a twitch, a delayed answer, a flicker of the eyes, signals that detectives exploited carefully, probing for further admissions, revealing inconsistencies, and pushing the narrative forward. Every tactic was measured, Every question, tone, and pause was deliberate. 15 years of hidden activity were collapsing under scrutiny, the careful camouflage of routine stripped away to expose the unvarnished reality of his actions. Emily's story, long suspended in absence, now exerted presence in every corner of the room. The town's streets, parks, and homes resonated in memory, echoing the suspense and fear that had pervaded Macon for over a decade. Each resident's recollection, long dormant, now served as a brushstroke in the reconstruction of that night. The interplay of confession, evidence, and memory created a tapestry of revelation, transforming absence into narrative, terror into understanding, and speculation into fact. As the interrogation approached its most intense moments, the suspect admitted movements that had been previously unknown, details that confirmed long-held suspicions, and minor acts that now carried major significance. Detectives leaned in, documenting every syllable, every pause, aware that the smallest admission could tip the case into resolution. Emily's parents absorbed the details with painful clarity, each revelation, a blend of grief and reluctant relief, the impossible made tangible. The town's collective anxiety, suspended for 15 years, now edged toward closure, though the scars of memory and fear would endure. The room, thick with years of absence, grief, and anticipation, seemed to shrink under the weight of the narrative. The suspect, ordinary yet monstrous, confronted the accumulated truth of his actions. Detectives observed, recorded, and pressed, knowing that the culmination of meticulous investigation and relentless persistence was now reaching its apex. Every moment of hesitation, every flicker of expression, every carefully chosen word contributed to a portrait of crime and consequence that had remained hidden for 15 years. By the end of the session, the confession had revealed the depth of calculation, patience, and manipulation that had allowed him to evade justice. The narrative of that night, once obscured, now existed in stark, chilling clarity. Emily Harper's presence, though absent in life, had guided the reconstruction, her memory anchoring both investigators and community members in pursuit of truth. The cold case, long dormant, had finally been confronted, its resolution demanding acknowledgement of both horror and endurance. The town of Macon, shaped indelibly by absence, now faced the tangible shadow of revelation, the ordinary transformed into extraordinary, and fear tempered by the long-awaited emergence of truth. The confession did more than unveil a timeline, it unearthed secrets the town had never imagined. Macon, long asleep under the guise of ordinary life, now shivered under the weight of revelation. Neighbors, once unsuspecting, were suddenly participants in a story that had shaped every quiet street, every late-night whisper, every cautious glance over a shoulder. Detectives mapped the suspect's movements alongside newly disclosed locations, each one more unsettling than the last: abandoned lots, hidden trails, forgotten alleyways, the overlooked corners where fear had quietly festered for 15 years. The ordinary geography of Macon was transformed into a landscape of terror, a chilling monument to calculated observation and patient malevolence. Emily Harper's parents were shaken anew. Every disclosed detail, from the subtle manipulations to the choices that forced Emily into isolation, carved fresh wounds in their hearts. Friends and neighbors listened in disbelief, struggling to reconcile the man they had casually greeted with the meticulously orchestrated predator revealed in confession. Social media erupted quietly at first, whispers building into conversations swelling into outrage. The community had long speculated, theorized, mourned, and feared, but these revelations forced everyone to confront a truth far more unsettling than imagined. The predator had lived among them, ordinary in appearance, extraordinary in cruelty. Forensics continued to illuminate the night. Objects long stored in evidence lockers were re-examined, fibers now linked to the suspect, fingerprints finally matched, minute residues teased from surfaces with techniques unavailable in 2000. Digital enhancements revealed images once indecipherable, mapping the suspect's movements across time and space. Each confirmation was a hammer blow to uncertainty, each match a punctuation mark in the narrative that had haunted Macon for over a decade. Investigators moved methodically, aware that closure demanded not just confession, but corroboration, the cold hard alignment of memory, observation, and science. The suspect revealed details about places Emily had passed that night, the alley behind the diner, the vacant lot near Vine Street, the subtle shift of shadows across a familiar path. Detectives reconstructed these moments with painstaking care, replicating lighting conditions, angles, and environmental factors. The city's streets, its sidewalks, its ordinary corners were transformed under scrutiny into stages of terror and control, the invisible choreography of a predator laid bare. Every revelation compounded the horror, magnifying the meticulousness of his actions and the quiet terror he had imposed on the community. Community members began to understand the scope of what had gone unnoticed. Parents walked their children along the same paths Emily had taken, recounting memories, noting details they had ignored. Teenagers whispered among themselves about fleeting glimpses, unexplained noises, moments long forgotten. Macon itself seemed to awaken, its collective consciousness acutely aware of ordinary danger, of the subtle manipulations of a predator, who had woven himself seamlessly into daily life. The town's history had been rewritten overnight, ordinary streets now charged with the memory of absence and the weight of revelation. The confession revealed psychological layers previously unimaginable. He described her reactions, fleeting moments of awareness, instincts that briefly guided her away from detection, hesitations that shaped the outcome. Detectives noted each description, cross-referencing with witness statements and forensic evidence. The interplay of psychology and opportunity was evident, a carefully constructed pattern of observation, patience, and exploitation. Emily's life, constrained by a predator's calculation, became a series of precise movements, each step manipulated by someone who understood ordinary behavior with unnerving clarity. As the community absorbed these revelations, outrage mingled with relief. Families were shocked by the ordinariness of the man responsible, by the realization that evil had hidden behind the facade of routine. Conversations in homes, diners, and local businesses reflected disbelief, fear, and the dawning recognition that Macon had been living alongside a predator for over a decade. Yet alongside this horror came a cautious hope. The confession, corroborated and precise, meant that justice could finally be administered. The long shadow of uncertainty that had hung over the town was beginning to lift, replaced by the undeniable presence of truth. Emily's parents, though consumed by grief, began to feel the first faint stirrings of resolution. The confession answered questions that had been agonizingly open, filled gaps in memory, and illuminated the contours of events that had eluded understanding for 15 years. Yet each answer carried weight. Knowledge of the meticulous manipulation, the patient observation, the cold calculation that had guided the predator. Emotional relief was interlaced with renewed sorrow, a reminder that closure, while necessary, could never fully erase trauma. The town's narrative began to shift. Stories that had been whispered for years, the sightings, the fleeting fears, the unexplainable unease, now made sense. The ordinary events of 15 years prior were reframed as components of a carefully executed sequence of control and observation. Each resident could reinterpret personal memories, each minor observation confirmed by the confession, each overlooked detail revealed as a thread in the web of manipulation. The cold case was no longer a ghostly presence, it was a concrete, horrifying, undeniable reality. Detectives carefully documented every disclosure, understanding that the confession was only the first step. Evidence, corroboration, and meticulous recording were critical to transform admission into justice. The suspect's calm demeanor occasionally cracked under repeated questioning, micro-expressions revealing discomfort at being unable to control the narrative entirely. Each hesitation was a foothold for further inquiry, a means to ensure that every statement could withstand scrutiny, and that the narrative of Emily Harper's final hours was both accurate and prosecutable. The revelations extended beyond the night of her disappearance. The suspect described movements in the days preceding Emily's vanishing, his surveillance of her habits, and the subtle manipulations that created opportunity. Detectives reconstructed his patterns, aligned them with environmental evidence, and cross-checked against witness recollections. The town's landscape, familiar and mundane, was transformed in the investigation into a detailed map of predatory behavior. Ordinary streets became markers of fear, ordinary routines became part of the evidence, and the community's collective memory coalesced into a detailed archive of events. Media outlets began reporting cautiously. Headlines highlighted the confession, the corroboration, and the slow, methodical unraveling of a case that had haunted Georgia for 15 years. Social media amplified each detail, conversations erupted, and Macon felt the eyes of the nation upon it. The town, already intimately familiar with the narrative, now faced external scrutiny, as outsiders absorbed the horror of ordinariness and patience, the meticulousness of a crime that had remained hidden for over a decade. The community's collective pulse quickened with a mixture of anxiety, relief, and disbelief. The suspect's ordinary exterior contrasted starkly with the extraordinary nature of his actions. Detectives observed the nuances, the fleeting discomfort, the subtle reactions to questions that pressed on the minutiae of planning and execution. Each detail confirmed the breadth of manipulation, patience, and observation he had deployed. Emily Harper's life had been carefully monitored, orchestrated, and ultimately manipulated into disappearance. The confession illuminated not just actions, but intent, providing clarity that had been absent for 15 years, transforming speculation into undeniable narrative. By the end of this phase, the cold case had shifted from haunting mystery to documented reality. Evidence aligned with confession, witness recollection, and forensic analysis. The town of Macon, long suspended in fear and uncertainty, now began the slow, careful process of acknowledging what had occurred, processing trauma, and anticipating the final steps toward justice. Emily Harper's memory, once a ghostly presence, now served as a guide through the intricate, horrifying details of a life observed and manipulated by a predator hidden in plain sight. The air in Macon was thick with anticipation, as if the entire town was holding its breath for what was to come. The suspect, long cloaked in ordinary life, was now fully exposed, and the law moved to close the circle of justice. Detectives coordinated with prosecutors, meticulously planning the arrest, ensuring that every legal protocol was observed, every angle covered. 15 years of absence had left a trail of evidence that required careful handling. The last thing they needed was a technical error to let him slip through the cracks. The tension was palpable, a quiet hum of anxiety vibrating through the precinct, the town, and even the local media that had been carefully briefed on the procedural developments. Officers approached with measured steps. The suspect, seemingly unaware of the precision behind every movement, was prepared for routine interaction, unaware that the culmination of 15 years of investigation was about to converge upon him. The precinct was sterile, orderly, ordinary, but beneath that calm veneer, history was about to be rewritten. Each officer knew their role, every gesture had significance, every word weighed against the possibility of resistance, denial, or manipulation. 15 years of absence, of evasion, of unanswered questions, were ending here. The arrest was quiet, almost anticlimactic, yet charged with the weight of years. Handcuffs clicked with the sound of finality, a mechanical punctuation in a story stretched over a decade and a half. The suspect's eyes widened slightly, micro-expressions betraying the faintest flicker of realization, as though the ordinary life he had curated could no longer shield him from scrutiny. Officers read him his rights, each syllable echoing in the quiet room like the toll of a bell, signaling both the end of concealment and the beginning of legal reckoning. Emily Harper's parents were present, watching from a distance, hearts pounding, eyes fixed, emotions raw. 15 years of unanswered questions, imagined scenarios, and whispered fears culminated in this moment. The suspect, ordinary to the outside eye, was now contained, held accountable for the years of trauma he had inflicted on a family, a town, and a community. Relief mingled with grief. Justice carried its own emotional weight, a bittersweet acknowledgement that the absence of Emily had finally been addressed, but could never be erased. The procedural steps were executed with precision. Evidence, painstakingly collected over 15 years, was catalogued, documented, and cross-referenced with the confession. Fiber matches, fingerprints, and DNA aligned seamlessly. Witness statements corroborated the narrative. Digital reconstructions of the suspect's movements were presented, leaving no doubt of his presence, his actions, and the sequence that had led to Emily's disappearance. The legal case, once a skeleton of suspicion, now stood robust, fortified by science, memory, and confession. Media attention intensified. Headlines captured the drama in blunt, startling clarity. Georgia cold case solved. Confession stuns Macon. 15-year mystery ends in arrest. Reporters visited streets once familiar in their ordinariness, but now forever marked by absence. Community members shared stories, revisited memories, and reconciled decades of fear with the undeniable reality of justice in motion. The narrative of Emily Harper, once fragmented and ghostly, now carried coherence, clarity, and the solemn weight of truth. Court preparations were meticulous. Prosecutors reviewed the confession repeatedly, matching every statement against forensic evidence, environmental reconstructions, and witness testimonies. Defense strategies were anticipated, interrogated, and countered. The suspect's ordinary demeanor in public now faced the extraordinary structure of the judicial system, a system that would strip away pretense, test every claim, and demand accountability. Each document filed, each deposition recorded, and each piece of evidence catalogued was another step toward formal acknowledgement of a life disrupted and a community traumatized. Emily's parents observed, fragile but attentive, the legal process unfolding as an extension of the investigation. Each procedural moment carried both closure and pain. Witness statements, cross-examinations, and forensic summaries reiterated the meticulous planning and patient execution of a crime that had evaded resolution for 15 years. The balance between emotional impact and procedural correctness was delicate, each officer, attorney, and family member navigating the tension with care. The town of Macon felt the ripple effects. Streets, parks, and corners where Emily had walked carried renewed significance. Parents walked children along familiar paths with heightened awareness, neighbors shared stories of fleeting memories, and teenagers recounted whispered legends of a disappearance that had haunted their adolescence. Social networks buzzed with recollections, timelines, and interpretations. Macon was alive with memory, reflection, and the slow integration of a community's collective experience into the framework of formal justice. The suspect's composure in court was a stark contrast to the years of tension and fear he had imposed. Lawyers dissected statements, aligned narratives, and tested credibility. Every motion, every objection, every procedural tactic became part of a carefully orchestrated ballet of law, designed to ensure accountability, while maintaining the integrity of evidence gathered over years. The contrast between ordinary courtroom procedure and extraordinary narrative of manipulation was stark, underscoring both the meticulous patience of investigators and the persistent patience of a predator. Community meetings, memorials, and public discussions emerged in parallel with legal proceedings. Emily Harper's story, long shared in hushed tones, became a focal point of collective acknowledgement. Parents discussed safety, vigilance, and observation. Neighbors reflected on the unnoticed patterns, the micro-incidents, and the seemingly trivial moments that had pointed toward danger. Macon, as a community, reconciled fear with resolution, grief with understanding, and absence with acknowledgement. Each story shared reinforced both the trauma and the resilience of a town shaped indelibly by one girl's disappearance. The finality of the arrest, combined with corroborated confession, marked the beginning of formal closure. Law enforcement documented every procedural step meticulously, aware that the integrity of the case would be scrutinized at every level. Forensic specialists ensured all evidence was preserved, catalogued, and presented with clarity. Witnesses revisited their statements, reaffirming the details that had long been questioned or doubted. The architecture of justice, slow and deliberate, now began to solidify the narrative that had haunted Macon for 15 years. Emily Harper's memory remained central. Her presence, though absent in life, shaped every procedural decision, every investigative tactic, and every community reflection. Detectives visualized her steps, reconstructed her final hours, and mapped the subtleties of her interaction with the environment. Each procedural act, from arrest to court filing, was conducted with her story as both compass and anchor. The ordinary streets of Macon, now charged with memory, bore witness to the intersection of law, persistence, and truth. As the community absorbed the unfolding justice, emotions were layered. Relief mingled with sorrow, validation intertwined with grief, and clarity was tempered by the recognition that 15 years of absence could never be fully recovered. Yet the narrative, once fragmented and speculative, now carried coherence, authority, and the tangible presence of accountability. The cold case, dormant for so long, had been activated, confronted, and resolved within the framework of law, science, and collective memory. By the end of this phase, the town, the family, and the investigators had crossed a threshold. The suspect was no longer a ghostly presence in ordinary life. The cold case, once suspended in uncertainty, had transformed into a documented story of crime, calculation, and human resilience. Streets once familiar now resonated with awareness. Conversations once casual carried gravity. The absence that had shaped a community's psyche for 15 years was finally being met with acknowledgement, investigation, and justice. The courtroom was charged, every corner heavy with tension, as if the air itself had absorbed 15 years of unanswered questions and restless fear. Cameras lined the walls, reporters whispered into microphones, and the public gallery swelled with residents who had long carried Emily Harper's story in memory, in pain, in fragments of speculation. The suspect entered with measured steps, ordinary in appearance, yet under the bright lights and the scrutiny of law, every gesture magnified, every expression a clue, every hesitation an echo of a past carefully hidden. The room seemed to hum with collective anticipation, a community long suspended in uncertainty now holding its breath in a single, fragile moment. The judge's gavel hit the bench, a mechanical note signaling the orchestration of truth. The prosecution laid out the narrative with precision, timelines aligned, forensic evidence corroborated, witness statements reinforced. 15 years of absence and ambiguity coalesced into a seamless narrative, each element resonating with weight. The ordinary predator, once hidden among neighbors, colleagues, and casual acquaintances, was now fully revealed, confronted by the authority of law and the collective memory of a town that had long lived in fear. Every detail mattered, every revelation landed like a calculated strike in the orchestration of justice. Emily's parents sat rigid, hearts heavy yet engaged, absorbing each word, each piece of evidence, each step in the narrative that explained the inexplicable. Friends and neighbors, now present as witnesses to the public recounting, struggled to reconcile the ordinariness of the man before them with the extraordinary horror of the actions described. Social media, buzzing with live updates and whispered recollections, amplified the intensity, every post, comment, and conversation echoing the collective shock. The town of Macon, intimately familiar with the absence, now faced the undeniable presence of truth. The prosecution presented forensic evidence that tied the suspect directly to the night of Emily's disappearance: fibers, fingerprints, DNA, digital reconstructions, all painstakingly verified. Each element aligned seamlessly with the suspect's confession, each step calculated, each reaction measured. Witnesses described Emily's habits, the ordinary patterns of her life, and how those patterns were manipulated, exploited, and observed with chilling precision. The courtroom was alive with tension, the ordinary world transformed into a stage where truth, memory, and accountability converged. The suspect maintained his calm facade, yet under scrutiny, micro-expressions betrayed fleeting cracks. A pause here, a shift of the eyes there, the subtle tightening of a jawline, all observed by trained investigators and attorneys, each small detail magnified under legal and public attention. 15 years of hidden life were collapsing under the concentrated light of courtroom procedure. Each subtle admission, each corroborated statement, further solidified the narrative and eroded the ordinary mask he had maintained for so long. Emily Harper's story dominated the room without being present. Every step she had taken, every habit she had maintained, every ordinary choice had been scrutinized, reconstructed, and presented. The prosecution guided the narrative with care, ensuring that her life, her absence, and her suffering were never obscured by procedure or detail. The town's collective memory, long shaped by whispered fear and speculation, now coalesced into a shared acknowledgement of her story and the events that had led to her disappearance. The courtroom murmurs swelled as the defense attempted minor challenges, questioning technicalities, the interpretation of evidence, the reliability of witness memory. Each motion, each objection, was met with meticulous counterpoint, reinforcing the alignment between confession, physical evidence, and human recollection. Detectives and forensic specialists sat in witness boxes, explaining the convergence of their work with calm precision. Every word, every chart, every reconstruction reinforced the inevitability of resolution, the slow but relentless march of justice that had spanned 15 years. Outside the courtroom, the community experienced waves of shock, anger, and cautious relief. Streets buzzed with conversation, parents spoke in hushed tones about safety and observation, neighbors recalled long-forgotten incidents that now took on new significance. Social media amplified the narrative, each post weaving memory, fact, and speculation into a communal acknowledgement of both horror and accountability. The town of Macon, shaped indelibly by absence, now began to reconcile grief with closure, suspicion with certainty, and fear with justice. Inside the courtroom, testimony continued. Witnesses recounted Emily's final known movements, the ordinary paths she had walked, and the subtle interactions that had been observed and manipulated. Each memory reinforced the narrative, each statement illuminated aspects of the suspect's calculated patience, and each corroboration tied directly to forensic findings. The ordinary streets of Macon, familiar and mundane, were now etched in the collective consciousness as stages of predation, observation, and human resilience. Emily's parents, though overwhelmed, absorbed the proceedings with acute focus. The description of her habits, her subtle awareness, and the moments of instinct she displayed were both painful and clarifying. The contrast between her ordinary, vibrant life and the cold, calculated planning of the suspect amplified the horror of the narrative. Yet within that pain emerged a fragile acknowledgement. The pieces of mystery that had haunted them for 15 years were finally being assembled into coherent understanding, allowing the first stirrings of emotional closure to take root. The prosecution outlined the suspect's psychological manipulation, patience, and exploitation of routine. They illustrated how ordinary actions, unnoticed moments, and mundane observations had been weaponized. Maps, timelines, and reconstructed sequences displayed the precision with which he had monitored, anticipated, and controlled circumstances. Each revelation sent waves of disbelief through the courtroom, amplified by the realization that ordinary trust, routine familiarity, and communal normality had been used against the town's most vulnerable. As the trial proceeded, subtle tension filled the room at every pause. Attorneys, investigators, and observers noted the microreactions of the suspect, fleeting discomfort, delayed responses, shifts in posture. The meticulous detailing of events left little room for evasion. 15 years of concealment, patience, and ordinary appearances could no longer shield him from scrutiny. Every statement, every piece of corroborated evidence, every witness recollection formed an unbroken chain leading directly to accountability. The community outside remained deeply engaged. Local media recounted every testimony, every revelation, every shocking detail. Parents, neighbors, and teenagers reflected on streets they had walked, routines they had maintained, and moments long ignored. Macon's ordinary world, now vividly reframed, carried the indelible imprint of both absence and accountability. Conversations, recollections, and subtle acknowledgments of fear interwove with recognition of resilience and the long-awaited promise of closure. Emily Harper's absence, though permanent, exerted powerful influence. Detectives visualized every step, every routine, every small choice that had intersected with the suspect's calculation. Witnesses recounted her personality, habits, and final interactions. The legal proceedings transformed memory into documented narrative, speculation into substantiated truth. The courtroom, the community, and the family converged around a singular acknowledgement. 15 years of uncertainty were finally being addressed with rigor, clarity, and truth. As Part 10 concludes, the trial continues to unfold with heightened emotional resonance. The suspect's ordinary exterior contrasts starkly with extraordinary malice. Forensic evidence, corroborated testimony, and confession converge to illuminate the long-hidden truth. Emily Harper's story, embedded in the memory of a town, family, and community, is finally being acknowledged formally, the ordinary streets of Macon forever altered by the revelation of patience, calculation, and enduring human resilience. The cold case, long dormant, now resonates with closure, confrontation, and the lingering echoes of trauma that will never fully fade. The courtroom held its collective breath as the judge prepared to deliver the sentence. 15 years of unanswered questions, whispered fears, and lingering grief coalesced into this single moment. Emily Harper's parents sat rigid, hands clenched, hearts heavy with both sorrow and anticipation. Friends, neighbors, and community members filled the gallery, each face a reflection of disbelief, outrage, and the fragile hope that justice could finally reconcile the years of trauma. The suspect, seated calmly, betrayed nothing outwardly, yet the faint tremor of hands and the subtle tightening of his jaw betrayed an awareness that the ordinary facade he had maintained for 15 years was finally shattered. The courtroom was tense, the air charged with anticipation, the kind that presses against your chest and holds your breath hostage. The judge's words echoed through the space, deliberate, measured, unyielding. Each syllable carried the authority of law and the weight of a community that had endured absence, speculation, and fear. 15 years of hidden activity were laid bare. The careful orchestration of a life lived in ordinary guise could no longer shield him. The judge spoke not only to the suspect, but to the town itself, to the victims, and to the memory of Emily Harper, whose presence filled the room even in absence. The sentence was pronounced: life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The words reverberated like a tolling bell, each one striking at the long shadow of uncertainty, each one sealing accountability for acts that had haunted Macon for over a decade. Silence followed, heavy and absolute, as the weight of reality settled into the hearts of everyone present. Justice, though long delayed, had been articulated with precision, authority, and finality. The ordinary predator, who had walked unnoticed among neighbors and friends, would now spend the remainder of life contained, the freedom he had once exploited replaced with absolute confinement. Emily's parents felt a mixture of emotions, relief, sorrow, and the faint stirrings of closure. 15 years of tormenting unknowns, of sleepless nights and agonizing speculation, were finally countered with the undeniable reality of accountability. Yet grief remained, persistent and unwavering, a reminder that no sentence, no confession, could ever fully restore what had been lost. Friends and neighbors wept quietly, some embracing, some staring into space, attempting to reconcile ordinary memory with extraordinary horror. The courtroom, while procedural, had become a theater of emotional reckoning, a space where collective trauma was acknowledged and confronted. Media outlets reported the sentencing with urgency and gravitas. Headlines blared, "Georgia cold case concluded, life sentence for 15-year mystery, community breathes after long wait." Social media amplified the reverberations, each post, comment, and shared memory contributing to the communal processing of grief and acknowledgement. Streets that had long felt ordinary now carried the indelible imprint of history. Parents walked children along familiar routes with renewed vigilance, neighbors recounted past observations, and teenagers reflected on events that had quietly shaped adolescence. Macon was alive with memory, reflection, and the slow integration of collective trauma into the narrative of accountability. Investigators and detectives gathered after the proceedings, quietly reviewing notes, ensuring that every detail had been correctly documented, every procedural step properly followed. 15 years of investigation, patience, and meticulous attention to detail had culminated in the formal conclusion of a case that had haunted the community. Each member of law enforcement felt a mixture of satisfaction and solemnity. Justice had been rendered, yet the scars of absence and trauma remained, both within the town and within themselves. Emily Harper's memory remained central to every conversation, every reflection, every step of the legal closure. Witnesses recalled her habits, personality, and final interactions. Forensic details corroborated confession. The narrative of 15 years of uncertainty was finally assembled into a coherent, documented truth. The ordinary streets of Macon, once familiar and mundane, were forever transformed into markers of memory, fear, and resilience. Each corner, park, and sidewalk carried the weight of story and consequence, a quiet reminder that ordinary life can conceal extraordinary darkness. The community slowly began to reconcile. Parents discussed safety and observation, neighbors shared memories long buried, and social gatherings became moments of collective reflection. The extraordinary nature of the confession and sentencing forced everyone to confront both vulnerability and resilience. The predator had been ordinary, patient, and cunning, yet the community's persistence, collective vigilance, and dedication to truth had overcome years of fear and absence. Macon began to breathe again, though the exhale was slow, weighted with the residue of grief and shock. Emily's parents visited places she had loved, walking streets, parks, and corners she had frequented. Their grief was profound, yet interlaced with acknowledgement of justice delivered. Each step was both painful and healing, an attempt to reclaim ordinary spaces from the extraordinary trauma imposed upon them. Friends and neighbors joined in remembrance, recounting laughter, kindness, and the vibrancy of a life interrupted. The ordinary moments of memory became acts of resilience, small gestures of reclaiming space, time, and dignity for a child lost too soon. The town's awareness deepened. Ordinary streets, intersections, and routes became markers of both caution and memory. Parents walked children along familiar paths with renewed vigilance, aware of both past absence and the long shadow of manipulation. Conversations, once casual, carried new weight. Observations, memories, and recollections were shared openly, reinforcing both community cohesion and awareness. The extraordinary manipulation of 15 years past had left its mark, yet communal reflection began to restore ordinary confidence in everyday life. Detectives reflected on the meticulous orchestration that had led to closure. Every fiber, every fingerprint, every microdetail, combined with confession and witness statements, had converged to illuminate truth. 15 years of absence, of uncertainty, and of suspense had been resolved, yet the personal and communal scars remained. The ordinary life of Macon would continue, forever marked by vigilance, memory, and acknowledgement of both loss and endurance. Emily Harper's story, though concluded in legal terms, would never fade. It shaped the town's consciousness, guided parental vigilance, informed neighborly observation, and became part of Macon's collective narrative. The extraordinary patience and calculation of a predator had been met with extraordinary persistence, meticulous investigation, and unyielding pursuit of justice. The cold case had been solved. The confession had stunned the community, yet the lingering presence of absence, grief, and memory would echo through Macon for generations. As Part 11 concludes, the courtroom empties, but the echoes remain. The suspect, contained, stripped of freedom, and held accountable, faces a life that reflects the weight of his crimes. The family, though scarred, begins the delicate process of healing, integrating grief with acknowledgement, and memory with the comfort of justice rendered. The town of Macon, forever changed, carries forward both the shadow of trauma and the resilience forged through collective vigilance, investigative diligence, and unwavering pursuit of truth. The cold case, once dormant, is now a story of confrontation, resolution, and enduring remembrance. Even after the gavel fell, even after the handcuffs clicked and the suspect was escorted from the courtroom, Macon remained suspended in memory, fear, and reflection. Streets that had once seemed ordinary carried a subtle tension, a quiet awareness that life had been shadowed for 15 years by something lurking in plain sight. The echoes of Emily Harper's absence lingered in homes, in schools, in local businesses, reminders that even the ordinary can conceal extraordinary danger, that familiarity can mask meticulous malevolence. Parents walked the same sidewalks with careful eyes, neighbors exchanged furtive glances when a stranger passed, and children learned instinctively that trust was earned, caution a necessity. For Emily's parents, grief was no longer punctuated by unanswered questions, but by the permanence of loss. The confession and sentencing had provided legal closure, yet the emotional landscape remained treacherous. Memories of birthdays missed, laughter stolen, and ordinary moments never shared returned with sharper intensity. Their home, once a space of private mourning, became a repository of recollection, each object, photograph, and keepsake a conduit to a life interrupted. Friends offered support, yet even in solidarity, the pain remained, persistent and unyielding, a reminder that closure in court cannot fully heal a broken life. Community events, memorials, and gatherings reflected the duality of relief and continued vigilance. Streets once walked without thought now carried weight, parks and corners, previously innocuous, became symbols of both memory and caution. Conversations shifted, neighbors spoke openly about minor observations from years past, connections previously dismissed were now reconsidered, and the shared acknowledgement of trauma began to weave a thread of communal resilience. The extraordinary nature of the crime had forced ordinary citizens into a heightened state of awareness, an unspoken pact of vigilance and care. Social media and local news kept the story alive in subtle ways. Analysis of the investigation, reconstructions of the suspect's movements, and revisitations of Emily's life spread online, blending factual recounting with community memory. Each post, each comment, reinforced the dual presence of horror and relief. Macon, while legally free from the cold case's ambiguity, remained psychologically entwined with its legacy. Ordinary routines were forever punctuated by a knowledge of what could lie hidden in plain sight, a lingering shadow that shaped public consciousness. For law enforcement, the conclusion of the case was both vindication and burden. Detectives and prosecutors reflected on the meticulous effort required to bring closure, aware that every fiber, fingerprint, confession, and witness recollection had converged to illuminate the truth. Yet beyond procedural success lay an understanding that community trust, family grief, and social memory carried an enduring weight. The resolution of the cold case did not erase the trauma, but transformed it into acknowledgement, accountability, and historical record. Emily's story, though absent in life, persisted vividly in the imagination of those who knew her, in the minds of neighbors who glimpsed fleeting interactions, and in the awareness of families who had long wondered about danger lurking unseen. Ordinary streets became markers of memory, ordinary interactions were retrospectively imbued with significance, and ordinary life was forever colored by the extraordinary patience and calculation of a predator who had moved undetected through the town. Every step, glance, and gesture carried new meaning under the lens of reflection. Psychologically, the town experienced subtle tremors of unease long after the courtroom proceedings concluded. Even routine moments, children playing in a park, neighbors exchanging greetings, teenagers walking home, were imbued with caution. Awareness had become permanent. Ordinary life now included a lens of vigilance. Yet this awareness also fostered resilience, a subtle strengthening of community bonds, as shared trauma and acknowledgement of danger created networks of support, observation, and collective memory that had not existed before. For Emily's parents, rituals of remembrance took on new significance. Walks along familiar streets became pilgrimages of memory, photographs and keepsakes became anchors of continuity, and conversations with friends and neighbors allowed a shared processing of grief. Emotional closure was never absolute. Legal justice provided certainty, but the personal and familial impact of absence remained profound. Moments of joy were tinged with sorrow, milestones were bittersweet, and ordinary life carried an enduring sense of fragility shaped by past trauma. The broader community reflected on the extraordinary patience of the suspect and the extraordinary persistence of investigators. Lessons of vigilance, observation, and the importance of memory were woven into daily life. Schools incorporated awareness campaigns subtly into safety instruction, parents communicated with increased attentiveness to children, and neighborhoods renewed informal networks of watchfulness. The ordinary landscape of Macon had been fundamentally altered, not by overt violence, but by the revelation of what could be hidden in routine, ordinary existence. Media coverage continued to highlight the resolution, while acknowledging the lingering impact. Documentaries, retrospective articles, and local interviews chronicled both the procedural resolution and the personal narratives, shaped by years of uncertainty. The cold case, while legally closed, became part of the historical memory of Georgia and of Macon, a cautionary tale about observation, calculation, and the intersection of ordinary life with extraordinary malice. Community forums debated, reflected, and memorialized, ensuring that Emily Harper's story endured not only as legal record, but as lived experience. Emily's absence remained palpable in public spaces. Benches she had sat on, streets she had walked, and parks she had visited became subtle memorials, spaces where grief, memory, and vigilance intertwined. Community members, while moving forward, were forever reminded that ordinary life carries both fragility and resilience. Memories of her laughter, gestures, and presence mingled with acknowledgement of horror, creating an enduring emotional landscape that shaped the town's collective identity. The residual fear transformed into cautious empowerment. Citizens learned to observe, to question, to communicate, and to act without paranoia but with measured awareness. Ordinary interactions acquired depth. Fleeting moments of human connection were balanced against the memory of absence and manipulation. Macon's identity, once defined by calm ordinariness, was now defined by the coexistence of memory, vigilance, and resilience. The cold case had left an indelible mark, not only on individual lives, but on the psychological topography of a community. Emily Harper's parents carried on with fragile equilibrium. The confession and sentencing provided clarity, legal acknowledgement, and the faint comfort of justice, yet the emotional terrain remained complex. Daily routines were interlaced with remembrance, every milestone a delicate negotiation between sorrow and continuity. Friends and neighbors offered ongoing support, sharing memory and observation, reinforcing the emotional scaffolding needed to endure loss. Grief was neither linear nor diminished. It had transformed, shaped by the contours of resolution and the enduring presence of absence. Detectives and legal teams reflected on the success of the investigation with quiet satisfaction. Years of patient work, careful observation, and methodical execution had converged to reveal truth and deliver justice. Yet they remained acutely aware that resolution in court does not erase emotional trauma. The community's healing would unfold over years, punctuated by memory, reflection, and continued vigilance. The extraordinary patience of a predator had been met with extraordinary diligence, and the balance of absence and acknowledgement now defined both personal and communal experience. Even years after the sentencing, Macon remained haunted in subtle ways. Streets carried memory, corners whispered stories, and ordinary routines were forever informed by extraordinary events. Parents watched their children more closely, neighbors reflected on minor details that once seemed trivial, and teenagers absorbed cautionary lessons without full awareness of their historical weight. The cold case, though resolved, had become a living element of communal consciousness, a lens through which ordinary life was forever interpreted. Emily Harper's story endured not just in legal records, but in the hearts and minds of those who remembered her, observed her absence, and witnessed justice rendered. The town of Macon, scarred yet resilient, carried the weight of trauma alongside the affirmation of closure. Ordinary life had been punctuated by extraordinary evil, and the resolution brought acknowledgement, but not erasure. Memory, vigilance, grief, and resilience coexisted, forming the enduring legacy of a cold case that had finally met truth, yet whose emotional and psychological echoes would resonate for generations. The shadows of the past lingered, subtle but persistent. Even in ordinary mornings, the faint recollection of absence colored perception. The lessons of observation, patience, and caution had been internalized by families, schools, and neighborhoods. Emily Harper's presence, though physically absent, remained a guiding force in community consciousness, shaping both vigilance and empathy. The cold case, solved in legal terms, continued to shape the town's identity, an enduring testament to human resilience and the persistent echoes of justice confronted after 15 years of uncertainty.